Good afternoon, class. Welcome back. I have a quick question for you. Have there been any influences about your career decisions from your parents? Yes or no? And if so, how? Anyone?
Absolutely.
Yes.
My dad worked really, really hard to make sure that we had every opportunity we could. So I couldn't help but feel like I owe it to my father to be as successful as possible.
Is that all you have to offer?
Well, I'm also a pretty face.
Ah, very good. Anyone else? Yes. Yes, Mr. Delgato.
Yes, definitely. My parents both were artistically inclined, so that was definitely a big influence. And taking me to church ever since I was a little kid, it also played a big impact because I was exposed to music and theater and all kinds of expressions that I started to enjoy from an early age. Whether or not they supported me when I came out and said, I'm going to do this as my career, that is a different question, because they wanted me to be artistic and have the talents, but they definitely did not want me to have it as a career. So
Very interesting. How did that make you feel?
at first, very frustrated. Like, it was contradictory that they would introduce me to the arts and then somehow forbid me to doing it for the rest of my life when I was good at it and when I was getting appreciation for it. But then later on, I became to understand it as a challenge. I became to understand it as a way to not just make it easy for me, that it was also a different way of loving me, to say, if you're going to do this, you have to overcome this first struggle that almost everybody has to overcome first. And it became something like, if you're going to do it, really do it. Don't do it halfway, kind of thing. So I appreciate it now. But at first, of course, it was not I didn't take it in the best light.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Ms. Baker, your feelings of the same question. And please, talk amongst yourselves when sharing your experiences.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what you said. My parents worked really hard to give me every opportunity to be successful, so that I could do whatever I would want to do. And so I kind of felt like I owed it to them as well to, no matter what I chose, be really successful in it. And I definitely took a bit longer figuring that out. I was one of those people in my undergrad that flipped around on majors quite a few times. But I think once I finally made the decision on what I wanted to do, they've, never not supported me. They've just, as I grew up in a military family, it was always like, whatever you do, work your hardest at it. So when they could just see me like being lazy and being, a kid at times, it was frustrating for them. And it was then, in reverse, frustrating for me because, I didn't want them to think I wasn't taking it seriously or I didn't care about it. But it was just a lot of pressure to be constantly succeeding at what I did want to do. But, now I think there's no problems and they're very supportive. So I'm very lucky in that sense.
I guess I'll go next. My mom hasn't had a job in 30 years. She's a traditional homemaker, always packs my dad his lunch every morning, makes dinner every night. Traditional Republicans. My dad has a job 9 to 5, significantly overweight, comes home and watches TV every night and has done so for at least 30 years or so. And that was everything I did not want to be. And I'm not any of those things.
I had some more positive influences in my life. When I was a kid, my dad, not gonna say forced, but got me to get my first job at the age of 12, and it was working at a country club and running things to people back and forth, and then, I got a job every summer after that. I'm pursuing a higher education so I can be useful in the family business. So yeah, I would say my family had a major influence on where I intend to go.
I would also agree, but the way that I guess for me my family influenced me on a very kind of a passive way in a sense. My family owned a farm, and my father was a great farmer, but he he didn't understand the economic side of policy and the importance of being a good financial manager for your farm. And as a result, the bank did take the family farm, and because of that, that's what pushed me into understanding currency and money and how those systems operate.
I my parents had a huge influence on me just because they just kind of let me do whatever I wanted to do with my life. So when I was a little kid, I started out being super interested in singing, and that's like always what I've wanted to do. And so my parents were always super supportive of that and always like put me in classes or put me in whatever programs. And so yeah, so they were always super supportive of that, and they support it now too, and they've always supported it as a career too. So I've been pretty lucky.
That's very interesting. How was it to be supported? I mean, to have that support from your family when most parents don't want their kids to go into
Into the arts. I don't know, it's been nice. It's the reason why I've been successful. I mean, I completely contribute any of my success to my parents.
And in what ways were they supportive? Financially or just emotionally?
Well, not financially because we don't have any money. Like growing up, like we didn't have a ton of money. But I guess financially, if I was like down on my luck or something, they'd help out. Like, but we've always been very giving to each other. Like if they even needed money and I had it, it was so we've always shared everything kind of. But supportive just in always helping me write songs and stuff. Like my mom's always been really into helping me write songs. My dad's always been really into listening and like. So, I don't know, just in helping me out with everything, helping me choose the clothes I wear for a performance or something like that, just little things.
I think my parents wanted me to be traditional like them, especially my dad, who I love him to death, but he's definitely a woman has her place in the kitchen for sure. And I took the road less traveled, which is a harder road to take. But now that I've actually gone down the road long enough, there's definitely an envy there, I think, from both of them. They've both admitted to being jealous of my lifestyle, a life that they didn't want me to have at first because they thought it wouldn't work.
What was their reaction when you first told them how you wanted to really digress from what they might have expected from you?
It was really hurtful for me because they weren't proud of me. And I think every child wants their parent to be proud of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So did they just want you to kind of be like homemaker and at home and
homemaker and maybe some mundane job that was just easy, you don't have to, simple stuff.
Yeah.
What would you think your family would react like if you ever decided to take your accomplishment and your knowledge and everything you gain from school outside of their family business? If someday you decided that there was a better future for you somewhere else, how would they react?
Well, I mean, even if their preparation for my future was a little tough, it was with the goal that I would be able, in one capacity or another, to chart my own destiny. I know they always hoped that I would come and help out and try and take care of everyone and keep the family moving. I don't No, I imagine it'd be pretty close to a 50-50 split. That my mom would probably be okay, my dad probably wouldn't, my uncles wouldn't. But, I mean, it's not like they're gonna disown me. They would be disappointed. And I understand that when you build something for your family, it's the gift of a lifetime. It's the gift of several lifetimes, actually.
Does it ever make you feel like you not only owe them your devotion for your future, but maybe you're a little bit trapped? Do you ever feel like that, or is that something that doesn't cross your mind at all?
Very few people get what they want, or very few people get a large percentage of what they want. The world isn't easy, the world isn't nice, and in large part, the world just isn't trustworthy. There is something distinct to knowing that I can always trust my family. So yeah, that can be a burden, but at the same time, it ain't bad.
How likely do you think you are to look outside of your family for opportunities? Or how likely you think you are to open up to that, personally?
Like, is it something that you want sometimes to not be part of the family business and to do something else?
I've had a couple of my older cousins sort of waffle and go in and out of the family business. My oldest cousin went and was a golf pro for a while and then came back to the family business. I mean, he wanted to make it on the PGA Tour, and he got support for that, but again, the world ain't nice. He didn't end up on the tour. He ended up in the family business where he was safe.
But would you want to?
No, I just want to know how likely you are to open up to that. Very likely, not very likely. What do you think now, at least?
I've got responsibilities, so it would have to be an opportunity to take me away from my obligations to everyone that I love.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay. Interesting.
Because you're sitting up so high.
No, I kind of want to hear more
Remember,
about you.
just said you were pretty face.
About me?
Yeah, I wanted to hear more.
I like to think I'm a self-made man. You know, my dad was a plumber. My mom stayed at home because I have an older sister, an older brother, 2 little brothers. That's a lot to watch after for. But, you know, people make this case for upward mobility being impossible, but I'm studying to become a lawyer. Like, that's way more than my father ever dreamed for. So I didn't get a handout. I didn't get any help. I had to work hard. I had to get track scholarships so I could afford an undergraduate. And I had to take a few years off between my undergraduate program and the current program I'm in so I could find the best, most affordable school and then wait to get in-state tuition. And, you know, it's required a lot of patience and perseverance, but I mean, it's also kind of informing to the opinions I have that, you know what, upward mobility is possible and you don't need handouts and people holding your hand every step of the way to get there.
I got a question for you. In high school and growing up, did you have any subjects or anything that you struggled in?
I have never been particularly good at English, and the arts have always been just kind of...
And were your parents encouraging of you?
Oh, my father couldn't be more proud of me. You know, I'm one of the first people, this generation of Parkers is the first generation that mostly went to college.
So, did you ever have any, like, tutoring or anything like that growing up?
Well, when you're on the track team, we all look out for each other and make sure we're passing our classes.
But nothing from your family at all?
I mean, my dad put clothes on my back and food on my plate when I was a kid, for sure. You know.
Did you get a car when you turned 16 or anything like that?
I wish. Oh,
I'm
man.
gonna piggyback off of what he's saying. I didn't join the military because I'm proud of my country. I joined the military because I didn't have money. I didn't have money and I needed to go to school. I risked my life.
You took some responsibilities.
I took responsibilities because I
You improved
had
your situation by making sacrifices.
because God knows where I would have been because my parents didn't save it. My parents don't care about education. They don't think education is important.
And you know what, Krista? That sets you apart from so many people because people like you and I were willing to make sacrifices to get somewhere else. A lot of people would rather have them get a handout and lift them up. You know what? Not a lot of sympathy for these people. Sorry.
Interesting. How likely do you think what you've told us will influence the decisions you take once you become a professional?
Can you rephrase that?
Like how likely are you to be influenced by your background, you think, by this self-made kind of philosophy that you have once you become a lawyer and you have to work to represent other people and to help out other people?
Right now, I'm of the opinion that beggars can't be choosers. If I'm out of school and there's a firm that wants to hire me, you know what, even if I disagree with what the firm has to say, I would work my best to be impartial and provide the due process that every American is entitled to.
Interesting.
Ultimately, you know, I want to start out as a lawyer. It'd be cool to do some criminal justice sort of thing, but I want to be a judge. You know, that's the 10, 15-year plan from now.
Wow.
So that would require me to be impartial and to consider the law on a case-by-case basis.
So how did you get into track?
It's kind of
Interesting to me too.
You know, I'm not good at baseball, not good at basketball. I'm really skinny, and I could run a mile in under 5 minutes.
Wow, that's awesome.
Did your parents take you to track practice and stuff and all that?
Well, sometimes for practice I had to be up earlier than my parents, or my dad would already be at work sometimes, so there was a lot of getting rides from friends, waking up early, to walk 2 miles downhill in the snow both ways. My parents would always help me if I asked for help.
Would they go out of their way to help you?
I also had a certain reasonable expectation of my parents' situation. I wasn't asking them to get me a car so I could look cool for showing up to prom because I knew that was out of the picture. If the question is, did my parents help me at all? My dad spent 80 hours a week fitting pipes. My dad helped me get to a healthy place in life, for sure.
How do you pay for school?
I had a track scholarship for my undergrad, and I had to take a few years off to save, and I had to take a few years off to find the school that met my needs and to qualify for in-state tuition.
It's interesting that you said...
I'm also a paralegal.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said, I had to do this, I had to do that. If you didn't have to do that, would that have been your first choice?
I mean, oh boy, things could have been so much easier if I didn't have to do all these things. But I did all these things because I knew I wanted to do them.
Oh, so you wanted to do them as well. You wanted to take the time off and work.
Well, I mean,
So it was a personal decision.
I want to become a lawyer, and I don't think that would have changed whether or not my dad is a plumber or my parents were doctors and lawyers. You know, I think that's just this due process is such an interesting thing that it's one of the few things I do think everyone is entitled to. Due process.
Okay.
That gives us all a fair bite at the apple, I think.
Okay.
And do you think that our current system is just?
Oh, I think you would have to be living under a rock to not notice the inequalities sometimes.
Oh.
And do you have any plans when you're on the bench to... How do you plan to use your influence to affect positive change in that way?
I kind of want to remove my influence and truly make it about what is fair under this situation, under the precedents that have been set before it. I do support, I'm a libertarian. I think that everyone has their, I'm an independent. I think everyone has their right to do pretty much whatever they want if they're not hurting anyone. So I kind of can't believe I'm saying this. I'm applauding the DAs in New York City, the liberal DAs who are saying, you know what, we're not going to persecute people for marijuana possession or nonviolent misdemeanor drug crimes. And that's one way of choosing which laws to enforce and wait for time to catch up to what's fair. Sometimes what's moral isn't always legal, and it's up to the legislative branch to fix those sort of things. I would definitely express my opinions and endorse so-and-so running for such and such, but ultimately, I believe that justice is blind.
I had a question for you. You said that you went into the military not because you were proud of your country, but because you almost had to. Of course,
85% of people
but I
in
haven't.
the military join it for the sake
Right,
of
I haven't
earning
asked the
money to get
I haven't
education.
asked the question yet though. Do you think that's the right reason?
Well, I didn't even know the difference between a Democrat or a Republican when I joined the military. I was a child. I was a child. I had no right to be in Iraq fighting a war.
Interesting.
They took advantage of me in my youth.
So how would you have felt
Well.
if you had the opportunity for education without having to go down that route?
Then I would have gone to school.
Yeah.
Wow.
So if we had like a policy in this country where everyone got education, you would be supportive of that?
Free education?
Yeah.
If you have free education, then I think you need to have mandatory military service.
Why is that?
Because nothing in life is free. You have to earn your take.
Yeah.
So, but you
I
just
agree with
said that if it was offered for you,
Like if my parents had a ton of money, yeah, I would have gone to school.
If my parents had a ton of money, I would have been a lawyer by now. I'd be driving a Ferrari. Instead, I'm taking the bus because I have to earn my keep.
And I feel like part of the reason, I feel like the difference between your views and somebody who's a little more pro helping other people is that there's a difference between the fact that you seem bitter that you had to earn your way, whereas some other people are not bitter about doing that and would rather other people have it easier than they did. But it seems as though you would like for everyone to have it as hard as you have.
It's survival of the fittest. It's social Darwinism in its
Don't
own
you
way.
see the bitterness in
so
that? though?
so do you
I don't,
believe
I don't,
that
I don't
someone that
appreciate being
came?
called bitter. I take pride in how hard I work.
Yeah,
so-
no, that
So if someone,
If I could do it, there's nothing special about me.
there is.
I appreciate. That's very nice.
There's something special about you. There's something different
yeah,
about you.
you're the anomaly. You're not the. You're not the.
I
av-
disagree.
You know.
I'm not somebody possessing superpowers. I don't have. I was never bit by a radioactive spider. I had to practice track every day. I had to be faster than the kid next to me. And now in school, I have to be performing better than the student next to me. It's the same sort of thing.
She's
It's-
also saying that I think not everybody has that motivation or that drive to get to that point, because I think if everybody did,
Then what are you contributing? Why do you need a handout if you don't have the motivation to take care of yourself?
So like
Yeah.
getting a ride to school in the morning and
It's
stuff like that.
completely different than saying that I deserve school for free, even
have
though I
buses.
dicked around in high school and didn't take education seriously.
So you assume all the people that don't get that is because they're not taking education?
There are opportunities for everybody.
Does
There
that
are not
sound
opportunities
so
for
ludicrous that there's people in our world, and especially young people in America, who don't care about education
For
at all?
sure there is.
Oh, I
but I
agree,
think
yeah.
I think that
absolutely.
if those people don't care about education at all, then they're probably not going to take advantage of free education either.
And we have
Yeah.
free education already, and people don't take it seriously. So why would we
Right.
offer
Where?
free college?
Where do we have?
Why
Well,
should we
because-
just
Have you ever?
run
Did you go to a
our
public
economy
school?
just to
But it's
That
not-
was
it's not
free.
mandatory.
That's high school.
Yeah, and I had. I
That's
mean,
what I'm saying.
I
It's
was
free
lucky.
education.
But it's also
Yeah, and I grew
mandatory.
up. I grew up in a great area where I had incredible teachers. My school was actually was nationally ranked, even though it was a public school. And
What about the ones that are not?
yeah, you know, I mean, I look at that even within the public
But especially
system.
when it's
I look at the
divided by
difference
section.
between my
I
opportunities.
mean,
and those of-
a child didn't select what family to be born into.
I didn't choose to be born to my dad. I love my father
Right.
and my mother.
Of
but
course,
it would have
yes.
been way easier if I was born on the other side of the tracks.
Right, but what if
I made it.
Yeah, but what if it had been harder? What if you had been born to a family where, through no fault of your own, your dad had been incarcerated when you were a little kid? Or if you had been born into a family of no fault of your own that happened to be illegals living there?
I know the point
What-
that you're making. The thing is, though, there are a ridiculous amount of social programs funded by the federal government
Too many.
and state governments. There's so many of them, so you can't
many
say
of
that we're not doing anything.
People
So
still
much
fall
of our
through the
tax
cracks.
money already goes to these people. What else do they
we're
need?
talking
Yes,
about- we're talking about
I
enough
understand. No, I understand. But what happens is that although there are programs, there are also all kinds of regulations about those programs that people haven't taken a second look at. I think that even you guys, if you were to look at some of the regulations that are applied to those programs designed to help people, you'd be like, why is this regulation in place? This is almost like cutting
No
the
drug
legs
test.
off of the.
No drug test on welfare. That's ridiculous.
Yes,
They make.
I agree.
I have a budget of
agree.
$400 a month for my grocery bill. Welfare or food stamps for a family of the same size as mine is $800 a month. That family on food stamps can eat whatever they want. Meanwhile, as a working person who's trying every day to make enough $400 to meet my budget, I can't eat what they eat. I can't have organic chicken. I can't
Right.
have organic vegetables.
Right, but
can't
in order to
help-
be on food stamps, you have to be making very little money.
There's
I
a
can't-
lot of people in our
Yeah.
world and in
scam
America who will not get a job because it'll take them out of the welfare bracket or the food stamp bracket. So they
Right,
purposely stay
but
under
it's not
that
like
bracket.
but it's not like they live like kings. You know, if
What
you
about
know,
free? I took
you
my
know
son
people-
to a
if
dentist.
you know-
I
okay.
took my son to a dentist in South
Yes.
Carolina.
Yes.
Okay, when I was staying there for a couple of years, he had to get a filling.
Okay.
They assumed that I had Medicare.
Okay.
Okay. When they were surprised I didn't, I turned around and I asked, I said, do all of these people in the waiting room have Medicare? And she said, yeah. And they're going to have free work on their children. I couldn't afford the bill that they were going to make me pay for my son to get a filling because I wasn't underneath that bracket. Meanwhile, they don't have to work. They get better food than I do. They can get free health care whenever they want for their
Yeah.
entire family.
Of course.
But we
That's
need to
fair.
get
No, I
free
understand, but
universal
this is
healthcare.
but
I
the,
was
the
about
part
to say,
the part
why
that you're
wouldn't-
the part that I probably didn't get across is the fact that I just said they don't live like kings, but that's an exaggeration. The reason why they get help with food and help with
that
education.
much helps?
But let me finish. They get help with food, help with healthcare, with education. Is because they have such low amount of income coming in that they barely survive. They barely make anything. They barely make rent.
I know what the program is
And so
for,
it's like-
but do they need $800 for groceries a month?
But that sounds
Possibly.
like not. I don't want to use the
For
word
a family of four?
I don't want to use the word
Possibly.
jealousy.
I mean, the fact that-
$100 a person.
The
I
fact
don't
that
want to
it-
use the word jealousy, but if there is a better word, somebody help me out. But it just, and I don't want to use the word bitter either. But it just.
So it's like,
to
would you rather
me,
live that
Let's let
life?
her. Let's let her.
it
I think a lot of
sounds-
people would
Let's
rather
let
live that life.
Leah-
It's
let's-
easier.
Come on,
Do
guys.
you-
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's off. They live a
Okay,
miserable
so-
life.
I don't know.
So that's what
I don't
I'm-
know. Free healthcare, free food.
You guys
It
have
sounds
had
God
the
knows
what
floor.
else they're
You guys
getting
have
for
had the
free.
floor
Well,
back and forth. Let's hear from
that's
Leah
it.
for a second.
I just mean, it's just a simple thing. If there's a better word than jealousy or bitterness, then help me out with it. But that's what it sounds like. It just sounds like you're not happy for you can't accept that other people are getting more help than you are when you're working so hard.
I'm glad that you said that because it makes me realize that you don't understand how I feel.
I mean,
Because
yeah.
it's not a matter of me saying, well, that's not fair. I want that too. It's the fact that they have no reason to advance their position. They have no reason because they're living a better life than me and I have to work a lot.
but
they get free childcare. You know how much
they don't
childcare
get-
costs a month in our
lot. They
society?
don't get
It's
a better
ridiculous.
lifestyle
One
than you
child
do.
in daycare,
don't
one
know a
child,
single person.
$1,200 a
Right.
month. They get free childcare, twice as much money for food a month.
Yeah.
Free healthcare.
While you're
Because they're
working
all,
really
you know what that
hard.
makes me
So-
want to do?
so-
You know what that makes me want to do?
Quit
I'm
working.
not going to take that job. I'm not going to
How
take
about-
that
okay.
job because now I'm $2,000 over that bracket,
Hey,
and
how
I'm taking a
about-
$25,000, $30,000 pay cut a year. Why would any logical person do that?
Do you
Because
get
I
what
want to make
That's not
more
how
and
people
more.
think. I know ideally.
No, that's
that would-
that's how I
people
think. You,
Do you
you're
get
seeing
how-
example.
That's
I'm a
the
person.
people
I would
in
believe.
this room think everyone here is in a doctorate program.
Yes, yes. Your average American will understand that it does not make sense to be above that bracket, and they will do everything they can to stay underneath.
Do you get
So
how
show
it
me.
sounds?
I mean, I'd love
what I'm
because
saying?
honestly,
you should
when
do that
I
and test it out and see how great
yeah,
life is.
because honestly,
Why are you
when
not
I
doing
talk
it?
to
I
my
don't think
friends,
you believe it yourself.
Do you want to know
No.
something
Wants to be
surprising?
able to
I
stand
have
around
been.
two
I have
people.
done that. I have been on food stamps.
Yeah?
I've had,
And
yeah.
did you
didn't
prefer
abuse
that?
it, and
You
didn't
prefer that?
abuse it.
Do I prefer,
Was that a better life than
Are
you
gonna
have?
let me answer the question?
Answer it.
It's not a matter of whether or not it was a better life. It was the fact that I was eating better on your dime, on everyone's dime, for free. And what I'm saying is, I understand welfare should exist. I agree with it. I was on it. I needed it. I get it. But that much more? They need that much more? They don't need that much more.
Well-
It needs to be regulated.
Yes.
What is regulated?
Well,
It
maybe.
needs to be regulated.
But
There's
maybe
a-
maybe what
Needs to be
happens
regulated better, more
Yeah.
specifically.
Maybe so. Maybe the case is that it doesn't need to be get rid of, but it needs to be more specifically targeted to different people. Okay, so a person, how much do they actually need? How much is it reasonable to give them? And maybe we have to build some kind of ways that will prevent people from taking advantage of it. But it definitely is needed. You never know when you will be the next person that will need it, because a lot of these people, they were not planning for that. Life events sometimes change. You have no idea what could happen tomorrow that could end up with you
And I don't
living
think
almost
anyone
in the
here is
streets.
negating the fact that we should help our citizens. Or otherwise, God knows
I
what
don't
our
know.
streets
I
would
don't
be
know. It has
like.
been implied.
King up
It has
top,
been
I don't
implied.
know.
I don't think I think that's an assumption. If anyone is not automatically 100% for the current welfare system in our nation, then they're just totally against it. There's no room for debate.
I think that it being
consideration.
implied, like he was saying, I think that it seemed like it was implied, which is why I had the belief that I did. Because I wasn't trying to say that you are jealous of it or anything like that. It's just that's what it sounds like. It sounds like, and not anymore, you've explained what you're saying, but like up here, Theodore, like I just think that it sounds as though it's jealousy and not being okay with other people having an easier time than you.
How would that be if,
Even though it's
like,
not an
as a
easier
collective,
time.
we tried to make everyone's life better?
Exactly.
Would that be bad?
I think it's just
The
responding.
thing
to
is,
what
it goes
Aaliyah
back to
just
what I said earlier about how if people are getting everything they need and want and then some, they have no reason to work.
But do you
Nobody
really
wants
think
to
that's
have a
all they
job.
want?
That sucks. Why would anybody
There's
go out
a
and do that if you don't have
significant
to?
fraction of people that
People
that's
are
all that they
lazy and
want.
they're
I
going to
think
take
that it might
advantage of
be
the
a
system. It's just a
misunderstanding.
matter of fact. It's human nature.
I think that it might
So-
be a
Regards,
misunderstanding
just
or an
please,
assumption
just
of
in
what other
regards
people
to what
want.
Aaliyah said about jealous, I think it's bizarre that you perceive this as jealousy, because I'm proud of how hard I had to work, and it's not jealousy, it's sympathy. It's feeling sorry for people for not being able to take themselves seriously enough to work hard, for not having the motivation to improve their situation in life. There are people who's like, oh, let's give them free college, let's give them free healthcare, let's free, everything's free, ha 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 ha. But let's you're willing to work harder for these people who are not willing to work hard
Yes.
for themselves.
Yes.
Well, yes. Look, may I?
Well,
I'll
yeah.
make it brief. Okay.
okay.
That would make a lot of sense, and I understand where you're coming from. Okay, but personally, I think where the flaw is that you're assuming that it is a level ground for all of us, that we're all starting from the same level and that we all have the same opportunities, and I think that is the biggest problem that we're facing right now, is that some people have developed a blind eye to the situation where you have kids that are born into way more precarious lifestyles than other people, who, no matter how much you help them, the damage has been done over centuries. What I mean by this is, you have, especially African American families, where kids are born into parents that have been through the incarceration system already, many times for crimes that are not even prosecuted anymore nowadays, but used to be prosecuted by a judicial system that persecuted them unrighteously. And so you have the disadvantage of these people who grew up without families. You have the disadvantage of people who have been placed in certain areas of the city that have less jobs, that have a lower quality of schools, that have a lower amount of resources from the city distributed to them. And so that has affected over generations. And so even though, and again, it's not your fault sometimes that you were born into, and I'm not going to say you were born into gold, because you're not. You told us your story. You're definitely not. And I'm not assuming that. But there are certain characteristics about you that they're no fault of your own, that the system has made favorable. And those characteristics are the fact that you are straight, because you don't get the discrimination for being straight.
My circumstance is related to how hard I work.
Yes, of course. Listen. I understand. You had a lot of difficulties. I'm not negating that you had difficulties, and I'm proud for you that you worked. I'm proud that you got through all those things. But there are people who have even more, or sometimes not even more, but some that are different challenges that sometimes we have neglected as a society to address, because they're difficult to see. There's some things that are developed through generations and get magnified through generations.
But what
and
do
those
you
are the
suggest?
things that.
What do you suggest? Because we already have we have free healthcare, we have free food, we have free school, we have free housing.
Thank you for
free
mentioning
housing,
that. Thank you
free
for
everything,
mentioning that.
and they're still not
Absolutely.
getting
I
better.
get to talk.
Yeah.
Something I have never complained about.
Okay.
Workman's comp. You get hurt on the job, number one, that company owes you money if it's their fault. And our legal system is actually set up to provide that. But workman's comp is something I'm never going to complain about. Average wait time for somebody who's unemployed in the United States to find a job is about 6 months right now. I don't have a problem helping somebody with unemployment when they're looking for a job. Okay. I do have a problem helping someone with unemployment when they're not going to interviews, when they're not applying for jobs.
What
How
if
do
they
you
have
discern
Down
within-
syndrome? What if they have a
That's a
condition?
completely
By the
different.
Americans with Disabilities
okay,
Act.
I was
just
gonna bring
like
up-
workman's comp.
I was
I'm
gonna
not
bring up-
hitting people who are
No,
down.
that's another one. I mean, when you look at who's on the welfare system, I mean, it's predominantly women and children.
Let me bring-
and so in the case, like, let's say, I mean, heaven forbid, something happened to your husband. What would you do?
That's a very good question. It's very scary.
And so, would you want something in place that protects you?
There is something in place that protects
Yeah,
you.
and so
And that's what I'm saying. You
and-
keep talking about how sad it is for all these people.
No,
What
this
else
is
do they
not-
need?
But
What
then-
else do they
but
want?
this is not maybe.
Maybe
but-
we're giving them too much, and
Okay,
that's the
so-
problem.
But let me say something before. Maybe it's not that we give them too much. Maybe it's that we give them the wrong thing. And
Yeah.
why?
Yeah.
By why?
Okay,
but
what are you
let me
suggesting?
tell you.
No,
let me tell you why.
I'm totally-
And this is just an example. I'm not, by no means I'm saying that this is the answer, but maybe it's food for thought. Long time ago, when I was part of this religious organization, there was a missionary that was working in Nigeria. He was Nigerian, and he was working there. He had come here, studied, he went back over there, and he was giving to his people. And there were constantly churches that were sending missionaries over to work there and to help out. But one time I sat down with him and I asked, what is the best way to go over there and help out? What is it that you guys need? Do you need shoes? Do you need books? What do you need? And he looks at me and he says, see, Americans come here, they go to my country, and they bring supplies, and they bring this, and they build that, and then they leave. And the people from Nigeria are left with, okay, we have this. These things run out anyway. What we need, he said, is for maybe Americans to come and help us create those things for ourselves and teach us how to create those things for ourselves. So I'm not saying that we're necessarily free schooling, but maybe there's a way that we could. I mean, we haven't created every program that can be created, and maybe some programs should be abolished. Maybe,
As many
but
as we can.
I don't know. I don't know if numbers is what I'm gonna get into right now, but maybe specifically there are some things that could be looked into, and maybe they're not really helping. Maybe they should be get rid of, but maybe there's a better program that we can come up with that can really help people bring that forth. Because
But at what
by
point
force,
do they
by force of saying, okay, well, just do it alone and let your skills come up with something. That's like not helping. That's saying like, I'm not helping you by leaving you alone, kind of
Okay.
thing.
I think
Hold
it's
on.
self-responsibility.
So, to my example, workman's comp. The person who gets hurt so badly they can never work again, they should be covered for the rest of their lives. I'm not arguing that. So when we talk about unemployment and the problems I have, I do need to see that you are seeking a job. If you are capable of seeking a job, you need to be seeking a job to be on that program. And that's not
And
That's not cruel.
And how would you suggest that we
That's a requirement.
that we police?
That some people actually
okay,
abuse.
but
Some
how-
people spend time applying for jobs that they know they have none of the qualifications for, just so they could go back to the employment office and be like, well, I couldn't get that job as a brain surgeon, but
it's possible. It's possible. So how
it's
would
a significant
so,
fraction.
We're
So
just
how would we
talking
how
about
would we
closing
police that?
holes.
But how would we police that? How would we make sure that people?
I think there's a case
How do you
for
ensure there's no
decentralizing
fraud?
government.
how do, yeah, how do
Because
I-
show me an industry, show
doesn't
me
have
a
fraud.
system
Enforcing the
where there's
regulations
no
on fraud that
fraud.
already exist.
Yeah.
We don't
So wait,
actually
hold on.
enforce the regulations
How do
we have.
how do we pay for the enforcers?
Oh wait, I have a question. You're asking how we pay for things.
No, I'm saying
the-
how do we
no,
pay
no,
for the
no, 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 no,
enforcers?
no.
The first
Whoa,
question.
whoa,
The
whoa,
first
whoa,
question.
whoa, whoa,
Answer the
whoa,
first
whoa,
question.
1 minute. 1 minute.
The first
The Bernie
question.
Sanders supporter is asking me how we pay for things. I'm sorry. The person who wants free college for kids who don't want college is asking me how we pay for things.
It's taxes. It's taxes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's taxes.
It's taxes.
It's
no?
taxes.
It's taxing people who are succeeding at an unreasonable rate to help people who don't really give enough
They
of
want
their
Really?
shit
more
to
and
So are
help
you-
more
themselves.
and more.
So
and
Reagan,
more, and it's
No,
never
Reagan,
gonna
what was
be
the top
enough.
tax
No,
rate under
you know what it
Reagan?
is? It's us paying.
Reagan was the crusader for trickle down.
It's us not being
And
hostage
he
of the
had a
government
70+%
and making the government
upper
work for
income
us.
bracket. 70% tax rate. What are we at now? Like 20, 30, 30% maybe? You know?
It's 40 for
The
anyone
top
who
max
40.
maybe, and that's that. And like, let's be honest, anyone in that tax bracket, they're not paying that because they know how to dodge.
It's my opinion. That
So how do you feel? So wait. Let me keep going here.
My opinion is
wait,
that-
I'd like to make my point if you wouldn't mind. So, what about corporate welfare? You know, what about tax breaks for companies coming in and setting up shop where the city or the state loses considerable amount of tax revenue just to support that company? Should that company then have employees that are able to take welfare? Should any companies be able to offer a wage that's not able to be sustainable to live on, where you'd have to use these programs?
Yeah, should we apply that same measurement to people who are creating businesses? Well, do it yourself. Come up with the money.
My opinion is we shouldn't penalize people for creating jobs.
What do you mean penalize?
If you're taxing someone at an unfair rate, that's a penalty. I've created X amount of jobs. I shouldn't have to be paying so much into
Really?
these
So wait,
government
how many
entitlements.
jobs have the Walton children made?
Thousands. They have thousands
Oh, they
of
did?
stores.
Or
across
wait. Or did the patriarch start that company and he's the one who did it? Because they don't actually work
Are you
for the
blaming
company.
his children of the circumstance of their birth?
I'm
come
saying
on.
that they are
thought that was
opportune.
wrong.
They had the opportunity that they didn't have to work to make their money.
And yet they
So
did
it's-
because they had some
But I am
self-respect.
going
And
to
yet they
fight
did.
to
No,
give
they didn't.
my
No, they
children
didn't.
everything I can. Is that
That's not wrong. No,
That's
they're
no?
not.
That's personal
responsibility.
responsibility.
That's not
Well, on the
Yes.
other hand, the corporate welfare side of it, should Walmart, should they be able to pay people so that they can afford to live, and then they use their own company, their HR department, to teach people
I'm
how
sorry.
to get on
If
welfare?
you're a mother or a father or someone that's working at Walmart, you need to find something better than Walmart.
How?
Oh, but there are.
Skilled labor has value.
No.
So how do you gain skills then?
Well, you need to create
learn a
jobs.
trade.
Well, you need to
honestly
create
have an opinion
jobs
that we need
that are better
more
than
people
Walmart. There
going into
aren't.
trade school.
We always talk about how
I can
Trump has
support that,
brought
actually.
so many
Yeah.
more jobs, so many new jobs that are all
More
minimum
than you're willing
wage.
to give him credit for.
But they're all minimum wage. And then you say, get off of your minimum wage job, get a better
Yes.
job.
Yeah.
They're
What
all
you do-
minimum
On
wage
minimum
jobs.
wage, you can afford to
You do
go
what
to
my
a
dad
trade
did.
school.
You know what you
On
do?
minimum
Exactly.
wage,
what
you
money?
should be able to
But what
afford
money?
to
When
go
you're-
If you're in a
when
minimum
you're-
wage job, you can barely
when
afford to
you're-
pay rent, then how are you going to afford trade
Did I
school?
respond to the specific question that I was asked? What do you do
I don't
when
know.
you're What do you do
I
when
mean-
you're on one of these jobs? You do what my dad did when my older brother was born. He quit his job working at whatever restaurant near Lake Puckaway he was working at so he could go to a trade school. He reduced his hours so he could spend more time at his trade school. He went to his trade school so he could become a qualified plumber. He got a job as a plumber.
With
that
what
paid
money are you
better.
going to go to that trade school? It's not the same money.
You
It's
get
not
a
the
Get a
same.
job waiting
A student
tables.
loan.
It's the highest paying job
But-
for unskilled labor. I've waited tables at
Yes.
dozen different restaurants, and I always make more than minimum wage.
But if you're-
and that doesn't require an education, but it does provide time and resources to provide yourself with one.
It
But
depends
what if
on
you're a
city
single
you live.
parent?
It depends on the location again.
Yes.
If
Then
you're
you-
feeding all of your money into rent and food, especially if you're a single parent, how on a minimum wage job are you then also
My
able
house
to
was a
afford
single
trade?
income house. My father reduced some
Can I
hours
can I
in
say
order to
something,
do
a
trade
suggestion
school.
that I have? So we all kind of agree that the system's broken, obviously, right? So the one thing that I personally believe, if we fixed, that all of our problems would be solved: education.
Yes.
Education
Yes.
in our nation
Oh, it's
is
horrible.
terrible. We need to learn how to budget. We need to learn how to do taxes. We need to learn how the
That's
world
nice.
works so that
Yes.
when we go out into
That's-
this economy,
Yes.
That's
we can
nice,
play
but
the game.
I'm tired of pouring more and more money into education.
You
when
don't have to
people
pour
aren't-
money into the
They
education.
need to change
you
the
have
structure
to
and the
change
curriculum
structure.
and the-
yes.
yeah.
That's not going
Yes.
to cost a dime.
It's like you don't
Is
want to
it not
spend
so
money on
just like,
anything.
Just like,
It's
hey,
like-
all right. So
You
the
truly are an
privatization-
anarchist.
The privatized healthcare costs us $42 billion a year. A universal healthcare system is $32 billion a year. We're saving $10 billion a year. Hold on. So part of that is that, how many middlemen are there? You look at all of the PPO and HMO providers. How many billions of dollars do they
Unnecessary.
make every year?
Those
They're a
are-
middleman. They
those-
don't do shit.
They're middlemen. They get
So
money
if you
for
cut
making
out
money.
that whole
Yep.
gap of people that are making money so that they can connect people, that actually we could connect directly, and on top of that, economies of scale. Coming from a country where we have a program that provides great healthcare for all of the citizens. I see that. You're paying already. Here's the thing. You're already paying because when those people go
But
to
you
the
don't get it.
hospital,
But you don't get it.
no. Let me finish, all right? When people go to the hospital now, they have to be taken care of. Where do you think that money comes from? They have to be paid for by the hospital, and then that hospital passes that on to the insurance company. You're already fucking paying for it,
Exactly.
but now they're taking an additional chunk off the
Do you want to talk
top.
about saving money? Because your La La Land of universal health care, I'm guessing you said you were a champion for Bernie?
No, I
Doesn't
said
matter.
that-
Just listen to
That has
his
nothing
argument.
to do-
Okay, he's made his argument. It's my turn. So far, the only voice that's been taken seriously in regards to universal health care is Bernie. And if you look
No,
at
Mitt Romney is one that actually created a system that Obamacare
Mitt
is
Romney
based
has
on.
his
But anyway,
own sense of problems.
so
But in regards to the only voice that is actually being listened to in regards to universal health care is your boy Bernie, who his idea of providing health care to the very people that he's trying to help the most, the $50,000 a year crowd, it increases taxes more than the cost
No.
of their premium.
This
No,
is
it
not a
doesn't.
matter
No,
of
it
opinion.
doesn't.
Yeah,
This
it
is not
is.
a matter
You
of-
haven't checked the
So you went to
numbers.
It is
BernieSanders.com
mathematics.
and checked his economics thing?
Yes, I have.
so I looked
Then
at.
you would know that you don't know what you're talking about
I
right now.
do know what I'm talking
There's
about.
a $10
You-
billion
it doesn't matter.
difference.
It
This
doesn't
is
matter.
not a matter of
It doesn't
opinion.
matter how. It doesn't matter
I
how
thought
loud
you were
you
an
speak
economics
this.
PhD.
Yeah,
It doesn't
and
matter
I
how
know the
loud you
difference
speak when
between
you
42 billion
twist
and
the
32
truth.
billion.
You're just twisting the truth. It doesn't matter how
There's
loud you speak.
twisting the truth. I'm just gonna call it out right now. I do not believe that you went to that website.
Let's pull it up.
I'm gonna
Pull it up.
We really
Pull it
have
up.
to pull
Pull it
up.
up. Pull it up.
Lord.
So the thing is, that proposal is not like an end all be
Oh,
all.
how convenient.
So and also, it's
Such a
that middle
fucking
income
liar.
right there.
Liar, you don't know what you're talking about. You're pulling this idea out of your
Pull
ass
it
because
up.
it's
Pull
a
it
voice.
up. Pull it up.
Can we get me a charge
John, what did
computer?
you
Your
just
computer
say?
was on. I saw it on your freaking
Can we
glasses.
get me a charge?
I
oh,
saw
it's
it on your
already
glasses.
dead.
It's lighting up. It's lighting up. I see it. It's on. Why are
In
you lying?
regards to free healthcare, here's the
Yes, I am.
thing: people who are poor are ridiculously overweight. The amount of
What?
people. Listen to
just
what I have to
Oh
say.
my
There-
lord! Oh
Wait,
God,
listen.
there goes the hyperboles again. Are
Wait,
you
hold
kidding
on.
me?
Wait, calm down.
It is.
So it's a matter
lower
that
income
there's
families are
actually
more
a
likely
Yeah,
to
I was
be
going to say there is a
overweight.
higher
Intelligence.
percentage of lower income populations that
percentage.
have.
I will
Because
take
better
that
food is
over
more
all
expensive.
poor
Would
people
you
are fat.
stop? Can I please? Do I have
Not
to like,
hyperbolize.
sugarcoat
I'd love for you to
everything
not
to you?
hyperbolize.
Okay.
He's on the burner page.
Yeah, pull it up. Pull it up.
Where
Okay.
Go.
Get it, girl.
Do it.
here you go.
So why should we pay
just
for
gotta
free
use something
health care for poor people who cannot make healthy choices for themselves?
You already are. I mean,
But have you ever heard of like food deserts? Like, do you know?
Yeah.
Like it's like it's not that they can't make good choices; it's that they don't have the money to. And
Options.
I
and
think that's a joke.
unhealthy.
I think that's a joke.
No. Let
You
me
haven't
finish.
been-
Though.
well,
Let me
we
finish. Let me
regulated
finish. Let me
it.
finish. Let me finish. Let me finish. Let me finish.
Please
Thank you.
finish.
Let her finish.
Okay. Thank you. Unhealthy food is a million times more cheap, and it's also in more like in abundance. Like you can get a bunch of gross ramen that's not good for you, and you can get a bunch of terrible food. You can get a bunch of terrible food for a smaller amount than a small amount of healthy food.
I genuinely,
It's completely true.
with all of my soul, disagree with you.
And
I know
also-
for a fact
and
that it's
also in
possible to eat
neighborhoods-
healthy on the
you got
cheap.
the
Also
Whole
in
Foods?
neighborhoods,
There's no
that-
reason if I go to a movie theater and there's a family who looks like they can't even afford to put decent clothes on their kids, but they all have large popcorns and they all have a large
Well,
soda.
maybe they're treating themselves.
That's
because
not
their life
okay.
is
That's an
hard.
It's not an assumption. It's something that I
Okay,
observe
but also
over and over and over
in,
again.
in areas with
One person
in
at
lower,
a time. One person at a time. That's all.
in lower income neighborhoods, sometimes it's like miles and miles and miles to a grocery store.
The
But
only-
they'll have
the only thing
listen
is
really
that
fast.
Walmart.
Start making
Yeah.
Listen,
I mean,
not
okay,
even
what about
y'all.
everybody
Hey,
else who's not like
even y'all. Listen,
Those aren't the ones that are
listen,
on the system.
Not even. I'm not even talking about WalMarts that are miles away. I'm talking about they have convenience stores that are what supply their food.
Yeah.
Like that's a real thing. That's not a fake thing I'm making up.
But that
These
doesn't
people
negate
have
what
to
I said,
travel
though.
10 miles to get to a quality grocery store when they don't
Right.
have the money to ride the bus or put gas in their tank to
But that
do so.
doesn't negate what I said, though.
Yes, it does.
What the
Yeah.
point before everybody got so angry as soon as I opened my
As long as
mouth,
you spend a
the
certain
point I was
amount.
trying
That's
to make
true.
is
Well, when you're on
young
food
people,
stamps
poor
and you're
people
going
need to be
spend a fixed
educated
income, you're probably gonna make
evidently
that.
on how to eat healthy on the cheap because it is possible.
So how do you
and why if they are sad because they have a hard life and so they go and eat McDonald's every day.
Can you
and now
acknowledge
they're
food
fat and now
deserts,
they have
though?
diabetes and
Can
they're
you
going to smoke
acknowledge food
cigarettes and they're
deserts?
going to drink every night
Can you
and their
acknowledge
health
food
care is
deserts?
shit by the time they're 40. Why should everybody else have to
Can
pay
you
for their bad
acknowledge
habits?
food deserts though?
That's
Because-
fine. Yes, that exists, but that doesn't negate what I said.
Okay, but if you're saying that they can learn to eat healthy on the cheap, if they can't even get there, then they can't.
You're right. That's a wonderful example that you made, and I think that's great. But again, it doesn't negate what I said.
It doesn't cover up all the holes.
Yeah, but
we're
nothing ever is
recognizing.
going to.
Well, no, we're talking about tailoring a system to fix its problems.
I just think
not
it's a
acknowledging
difference-
problems is
I think
not
it's a difference
productive.
between. I think it's a difference between pessimism and optimism.
So how do you feel
How about
how do you
realism?
feel about
Yeah.
I don't want
Yes,
either of those things
yes.
involved
I
in
think that you're a
politics.
pessimist.
So wait. How do you feel about Michelle Obama's program where she went into schools, especially lower income schools, and taught them about that sort of stuff? A program that's since been cut considerably.
Well, my son is in elementary school now, and I have to go out of my way every morning, even though it's not fun, to pack him a lunch because the food they feed him is a joke. And I love my son, so I would not let him eat it.
There you go. That's part of it too.
What a privilege.
Yeah, making a sandwich.
Yeah, some
No,
people.
No, I mean
ready
a
to
privilege
have
for your
kids.
That I
son
can
to
do
be
that?
able, yeah,
No, I know my son.
to be able to have the time in the morning to be able to do that.
You think I have
You
the
know when I-
time
you
in
know
the
when I was in high
morning?
school?
You don't know what my life is like.
know when I was
You don't
in
know
high
what time I
school?
have to wake up and what time I have to go to bed in order to support the life that I want to live.
You know, when I was in high school, my parents didn't have money for food every day, and it was either sometimes going to school or not eating, and often all the food I got was what I got at school. That's why I also have a special appetite for those chicken sandwiches that they used to do.
But you know what, though?
Curly fries, because they were
Yes.
horrible for me, but That's the
But
only
you know
thing
what
I
though?
would get to eat.
There's people who want to cut education
What?
even more.
Did your parents take out any government entitlement program?
Absolutely not.
And you're still a PhD program.
Yes. I am. Listen.
He's an
It's a
anomaly as
completely.
well.
I'm an anomaly as well.
He's
I
an
come.
anomaly as
my
well because
parents.
he took himself seriously and more seriously than all these people
Okay,
begging for handouts.
So
are
my
taking
question is,
themselves.
No,
what's
I'm-
the
I'm
difference
lucky.
then between
I'm
you
lucky.
two that you don't
I'm lucky.
want to give people an extra chance and he does?
There's
It's not a matter of not giving them an extra chance. It's a matter of finding a balance between I'm going to work this hard and
No,
we'll help you
no,
get
no,
there.
no. Listen.
It's not we'll do everything for you so
Listen,
you can sit home and smoke weed all day.
Listen, I am here. I do well in this program. I am on the right path for success according to the data that I've given you here. But I don't consider myself a self-made person. If my parents weren't picking up those oranges every morning, I wouldn't be here. And
They
if it
worked
wasn't
hard.
if it wasn't because they had the physical strength to do that, which a lot of people don't have that, I wouldn't be here. If I hadn't gotten to the country, I wouldn't be here. If I didn't, by a mere coincidence, happen to live close enough to a good school, I wouldn't be here. If it wasn't for the help of a couple of my teachers in school who saw me in need and decided to teach me outside of hours,
Yes.
I wouldn't be here. I'm not a self-made person. I was helped. But the difference between you and I is that I'm able to recognize it.
I think, okay, for example, people of African American community, okay, that's a big, big community in our nation that needs arguably the most help.
I'd agree.
Okay. At what point do they work and
Americans
help
have the
each
shortest life
other?
expectancy.
They create their own community. And you know what? I'm seeing them do it now. African American women are starting to make more films, and I think that's so important because they're coming out with these African American dolls, these little Barbie dolls that they didn't used to have before, and they're really trying to work and create for themselves.
Can I
So
respond
how
to
Yes,
Miguel?
well,
Red
yes,
line.
yes, but
Can I
you know
respond
what
to
I
Miguel?
was gonna mention about that
He made a-
is that it's before you.
You can make assumptions about my life, but I can't get a word out.
Yeah, sure.
As usual.
But what I was
I
gonna
highlighted
say.
something interesting.
Sure, but you know what I was gonna say is, yes, they're able to do that for themselves now, but that's in part also thanks to the push that they have done for centuries when they were not
Civil rights
listened to,
movement, too.
and by the grace that some people might have had to actually be able to open up and see the push that they were doing and be able to say, okay, maybe we'll open up a couple of doors. It just takes
Exactly.
from a couple of people who are very close up to open up just a little bit and realize, wow, yeah. we
Well, that's
work
always
for
going to
it.
happen. I think that's
How about-
besides the point.
It's
No,
through
that's over optimistic.
perseverance.
That's over optimistic.
It's
How
through
about-
perseverance, and it's through perseverance and the changing world that is becoming possible now.
Yeah.
It didn't used to be possible.
It's not that they
only
didn't want to before.
Yeah, it's not that
Yeah.
they haven't been doing that before. It's that now because
Finally.
of different changes in this world, now it's a little more
It's a
accepted.
constant push
but
that
they're
walls
still
finally
facing closed doors
fell.
all the time.
I mean, it
I
used
think
to be.
if they had, if African American women
Yes.
had relied on the white culture to create African American dolls, to create African American movies that
It would have
accurately
never
represent
happened.
it would never have happened. So
Right.
they had to take self-responsibility.
No,
So-
but
so
it
wait,
also
wait,
took,
hold on,
but it also
hold on.
took a
Different.
couple of white people
It
to
goes-
actually open up.
it goes
'Cause
back-
if it
And I
ne-
don't think I think that's true. Obviously, that's true.
So
I'm not
if-
saying it's not true.
If you look back a few generations,
So that's what
I
we have
mean,
to do now.
You look at the laws that were in place economically.
Doors.
So there were basically a ton of hurdles in place for African American people to get loans. They couldn't get money.
Yeah.
They couldn't buy a house. There was things where basically like cut off from this community completely. There's
Right.
you couldn't go to where there's the grocery store right there.
Is that the case
And
now?
these
No,
hold
but
on.
the repercussions, but the repercussions are still true.
But you're
It-
not
it
where
takes
you are
time, over
because
time,
of
over
you
time, over
individually.
time.
You're here because you had a family that was able to have a house, and you're here because you had that support generationally beforehand.
You want to talk
So
about being
you're
jealous?
answering
That sounds like
assumptions
jealousy.
About a man you don't
No,
know.
it's
That's
realistic.
How does that
Because
sound
if you're
like
saying, well,
jealousy?
you got all that, and it's only because you're white, well,
No,
that's
I
not
said-
fair.
Because his white, it's
No.
his
That's not
specific,
fair.
it's his specific situation.
I think a lot of minorities say,
Which
well,
involves
I don't
being
get this
white.
because I'm colored, and you get all that because you're white, and that's true for lack of a better word, black and white. I think there's a whole gray area
There's
there.
definitely such thing as white privilege,
it's
though.
moved more and
Yes,
more.
you're
There's
right,
just
there is, and I don't
definitely a huge
negate that.
thing.
Oh, but
it's
what
not-
is it then?
it's
What
not
is it
black
that if
and
it's
white.
not that,
But I
then
feel
what
like,
is it?
do you think that you can honestly say that and not be of color?
Can I say that and not be of color?
Yeah,
I'm not
because
sure.
how do you really know the case when you're not of color?
What another world of wealth. Your history has been wonderful, and sharing it has been even better. So thank you so much for doing that. We're going to take a break right now. Thank you. Welcome back from your break. You know, I know it may be difficult to imagine, but at one point your parents were your age. How did your parents' challenges that they faced differ from the challenges you face today? Discuss.
My father is older. He was born in 1939, and he lived in the South, and he was black, and so his challenges are a lot crazier than mine. Yeah, I had to deal with a lot. Yeah, and my mom also lived in the South, and yeah, so the climate of the world is a lot different now. I think that we still have to face racial discrimination, but their life was a lot more difficult than mine was, for sure, especially my father.
I think for me, what I think of is you didn't need a college degree to have a good job in the 80s.
Well, by the time my dad was my age, he had 2 kids, neither of which he planned for, and a third one on the way. So his personal struggles is a lot more intense than mine were, maybe. He still worked very hard to better himself and make himself a better person. But if the question is in regards to the world that they grew up in, we're history students. I think the more you learn about history, the more you realize how it doesn't matter how much time has passed, some things are still so similar. It's bizarre.
Like what?
I mean, like, you could draw comparisons to some things like how the table was set during the long fuse 100 years ago for World War I. There's some pretty alarming similarities today. Back in the day, it was, Great Britain has the most powerful empire, and, you have a country like France that's not very industrial, but they're incredibly successful with colonialism, and then you have the flip side of that, where there's Germany that was very industrial, but not a lot of success in colonialism, and it's kind of reminiscent of this. The Cold War ended, but this is a hot peace we're sitting in. There's some striking similarities between the America-Russia-China relationship that there was between the Entente and Central Power relationship. That's one example of how history kind of repeats itself.
But the relationship, although it's between the same countries, it's actually quite different because
I
technology.
didn't say they were identical. I said that they were similar.
Well, I don't even know if I would go that far in a way, because technology has completely changed the world's stage.
Yeah, and that was the first modern warfare. That was a complete reaction to how technology was changing. The first year of the war, hundreds of thousands of people were dying because they couldn't figure out, it turns out you can't run through machine gun fire. We better dig some trenches. These trenches are beating our machine guns. We better build some tanks.
I think that we're having, I see what you're saying, but I'm talking about now. I think if we were to go into war with another country, it wouldn't be a battle. It would be
yeah.
it would be with robots. It would be with attacking our
It would be a race
Our-
to be the first person to knock out the GPS satellite or the
Exactly.
con satellite.
So
So
it's
you
a
have this
completely
military
different-
might that's worthless on the ground. It would be
Yeah.
very, very different. I'm not saying it's not different. I'm just saying that this is something I think all the liberals will be able to smile at. There's the idea that we're not as different as people think. The people that were born 100 years ago weren't some unsophisticated idiots. They had thoughts and feelings that were very similar to ours.
But I would argue that aside from inflation, like I said before in other talks, baby boomers lived in a completely different world than we do now.
Yeah.
I mean, the world is very different. I can say personally, my parents, in my age, they were not living in this country. So it was a little bit different even then because they lived in a place that had a very unstable government. So they had to deal with that. They had to deal with persecution for all sorts of reasons and a lack of liberty and freedom. They lacked the access to the internet that we have now. So whenever you wanted to know about something or inform yourself or get a wider perspective on an issue, you didn't have that. You just had the people around you. And that's it. Just you talked, and maybe you read the newspaper sometimes. But now, if I don't know something, if I want to prove something to somebody else, I can just say, look it up. Let's look it up. I can pull out my phone and look up a term, look up the statistic on something. And back then, they didn't have that. But maybe it was also good because they could focus on other things in life that are important too that we miss out on, like the quality of life, the quality of family time that now people spend is much lower than they used to spend back then. So although we have gained a lot, at the same time we have lost a lot of the core, values, those things that are actually very important that we have underestimated their importance in our life and how they shape how we behave, they shape how we treat others, they shape how we work through different problems.
I'd also like to add, too, that there's been plenty of studies lately that have shown a significant correlation between social media use and depression.
Oh,
Yes?
yeah.
So I
Climb
think
off.
millennials today, not only are we not able to get jobs, not only can we not buy houses, we certainly can't even travel to other countries to experience life unless you join the military and sign your life over for a few years. But we're also
That's a
more
little
depressed.
much.
We're all on antidepressants. We're all addicted to some sort of substance to get through this
We all are?
world and this economy.
Well, I'm not.
Hyperbolize.
Yeah, she's.
I mean,
I'm not
addicted
Addicted to caffeine.
I've traveled the
There's
world
a bunch
without.
of people. There's a bunch of people, for example, who I missed it. I had never, ever experimented with Adderall in high school. I didn't know it was a thing. And then about a year ago, I watched a documentary and I understood. I had no idea that Adderall was an epidemic, and everybody already knew about it. And you have all these young people, all these young millennials on drugs.
If people want
all
to
the
use
time,
drugs
and it's
to increase
okay.
their performance, that's
Peanuts
their
are my
business.
drugs, by the way.
Not to mention the opioid crisis. Our nation, our happiness index, I also read an article a couple of days ago that GDP is actually no longer the number one goal of countries to figure out who's best. It's the happiness index. They're asking countries all over the world are asking their citizens how happy they are. In America, we're not going to be high on that list. And I think, we need to consider that and why.
How do you measure someone's happiness? I'm sorry.
That's a really good question. It's very subjective, but there's actually a whole new field of study called
Maybe somebody stepped in a
positive
puddle that-
psychology, and it's actually, yes, it is a
But
soft science.
it's not
No,
hard
but
to.
I-
But it's
I
not
mean,
hard
I
to
agree,
ask.
yeah.
Like, it's not
Yeah,
hard
but
to
no,
ask.
you could.
So are
Let's say
you-
you asked me
are
on a
you happy
day-to-day
on a
basis.
scale of
On
1
a
to
day-to-day
100?
basis, okay, you asked me that question today. You know what? I woke up. I had my coffee.
Averaging over
Well,
the
but
past
that's
year.
but that's
then.
if I ask you
but
how you doing
you asked
today.
that, okay.
He's making the point that.
Do you ever notice
it's
when I open
hard
my
to
mouth?
survive.
My point is that that it's how you ask the question, how the poll is done. If you ask someone, "Are you happy?" well, maybe they stepped in a puddle on their way to work and that put them in a shit mood that day. Maybe tomorrow you ask them how you're doing and they just got the news, oh, I'm an uncle now. They're going to change their,
Well, that's why you
it's
have a
day to
large
day
study.
basis.
These studies are designed cross-sectionally and to account for these biases because there have been so many studies done strictly on
By
the
soft
construction of,
sciences that aren't
I
really
also
held to
think
the
that if somebody
scientific method.
asked you,
and that is not true.
if somebody asked you in a study, if you were overall happy as a person, I don't think that you would be like, oh, I stepped in a puddle today.
But I mean, they don't ask it like that.
Or
They
maybe
ask
he would.
No, I
short
just
term
don't mean
and
it.
long
Maybe
term, and they
you
bunch
were
different
examples a
asks
little
best-
too literally too.
But it's not just asking about happiness. It's like rating your well-being and like how, it's like, do you think you contribute to other people's lives or other people contribute to your lives? And they take these scores of all these different aspects and use that to gauge a happiness index. And that's how they come up with these generalized scores for these countries on, it's not just how happy are you
So
on a
it's a
day to day.
poll.
It's
So
longitudinally. It's like ranking your well-being. It's ranking your
So it's a
satisfaction
poll.
with your job.
It's a poll.
It's a study.
It's a study.
It's a comprehensive
It's a study
meta-analysis.
based on a poll.
no,
I have a
it's
question.
a little more than that. But
It's a study based on analysis.
But
it's
even
a
though-
poll, apples,
Whether or not you agree with it, it's happening.
potato.
So it's besides the point.
potato,
So-
potato. But let me ask you something. Are polls always right? Can we think of a time where
no,
the
but they
polls have
still
been
give
wrong?
you a glimpse. They still
You are
give you a
That's,
glimpse.
the same can be said for any research. Any research that is done is taking a sample of the general population to be able to take inferential data and then
they're
make
always perfect.
No, I didn't say
that's
they were
not the
perfect.
point. That's
But I
not
was
the point.
saying
They
that
were
what I was
perfect.
saying was you're saying you can't just take a survey and say how happy are you because obviously it's
says.
subjective. But I'm saying it's not completely subjective. They take some of the subjectivity out of it, or at least try to account for it by doing these cross-sectional
Happiness
studies.
is one of the most subjective concepts possible. How can you remove subjectivity from happiness?
because they're not just saying,
what does it
are you
matter if it's
happy? They're saying
subjective?
they're gauging things
You always
that are known to
caught up in the-
contribute to
yes.
overall
Subjectivity
general
has
high
nothing
mood.
to do with it.
Let's look at breaking this down into things that express overall general mood. I'm not saying that measuring the well-being of a country is actually a bad way to go about looking at which countries are happy. But those questions are going to be biased before you even start because one is an American perspective, and we define happiness one way, and we define our health one way, and we define our income and our families one way. And you go somewhere else, and they have different expectations. And even though they're going to answer the same question, they're going to answer it on a different scale.
They are. And that's why a lot of these studies, that's why they're done through meta-analysis, is because not only are there ones that are individually developed by people from a country for people in that country, there are research teams comprised of people from multiple countries encapsulated in a region, like Europe specifically, for a Europe Happiness Index. There have been studies done where they have people on the research team from different countries, and they're coming up with these questionnaires based off of, okay, let's look at cultural similarities, cultural differences. How can we structure questions the best way possible to make them as unbiased as possible? You're never going to be able to completely remove that bias.
I'm not
I have to
disagreeing
say, I
with
have
you.
to concede.
That was
I'll
so
concede that
eloquent.
point to you. I'm learning something here. You've taught me something.
Right.
But this is also kind of highlighting a major difference between myself and many of the people in this room. There are people in this room who think they are entitled to happiness. I am sorry. This is the real world.
Where did you
You're
get
not
that from?
entitled to
Yeah, I think you
shit.
just made
You're
that up,
using
dude.
that as a. You're using
Where
a
did you get that
happiness
from?
index to measure
Theodore,
the quality of
Theodore,
life.
One thing I'm going to say.
Theodore.
I'm sorry.
I agree.
I'm a
Theodore.
happier person
Hey,
because I
Theodore.
worked harder and I
Hey,
bettered
Theodore.
myself and I'm
Hey,
better than the
Theodore.
person next to me who wasn't willing to do any of that.
Hey,
Well, you're
Theodore.
better than them, huh?
Hey,
I would say I'm
Theodore.
better than someone who just sits on their ass all day smoking pot versus actually trying to better themselves.
Where did you get
So
that
what if that
from?
person? What if that person is like, say the head of a company, and
Then I don't think they're that person sitting on their ass all day.
Where did you get that from, though, that some of us think we're entitled to happiness?
You think you're entitled to everything.
Who?
I
Me?
think Americans
Healthcare,
are entitled to life,
education,
liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Pursuit of happiness.
I don't think
Very
anyone
different.
said that here that they were entitled to happiness.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Let's use it as a metric to measure how great countries are, though.
What?
Okay, the thing I'm gonna say,
Huh?
and I'm not disagreeing with you that setting up those metrics probably it's gonna control some of the variables. But when you compare America's happiness to Europe's happiness, those metrics are going to blend better. They're going to have more similarities because we have more cultural similarities, but we also have more capabilities. We have a much different expectation of our life. I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to equate first world happiness to third world
I
happiness.
absolutely agree with you. I think it's very hard to although I acknowledge it exists, I think it is very hard to take a world happiness index and rank countries because some people, just have more available in their country to them, have more accessibility, have less better living wages, better this, better that, whatever. I'm not saying that comparing countries' happiness indexes, I'm saying there are variables you can control things if you're trying to get a good idea. But to actually go in and rank them, I don't think that's really possible. I think you're right. I think, you can't compare first world to second world to third world, and then you've got cultural differences and you've got different standards of living and well-being. You just can't objectively compare that. There's no way. You're not wrong.
I absolutely agree, but
I think it's funny that you say that because I feel like we agree a little bit more than we realize. Because I was trying to comment that there's inaccuracies in the way happiness is being measured.
Yes.
So
And that's all that I meant.
A few months ago, we had a discussion about why the book Fire and Fury was not published in China. And I had mentioned to you all that my brother lives in China. So I actually, after class that day, I messaged my brother and I asked him his opinion. And he said that he had to research the book. He didn't even know what it was about. And then he also told me that the Chinese people are very aware that they are being censored and they don't necessarily like it, but it's not a priority for them because they're happy.
I've also heard some Chinese people say that it's not a priority for them, not necessarily because they're happy, but because they know that they can't do anything about it.
And that is the first and foremost difference between America and China.
Well, I think instead of just this, I think we just need to be open to the idea that happiness, however a country wants to achieve that for its own people, is ultimately up to that specific country. Whether or not we can compare it to another country is almost kind of irrelevant. But the point I was making is China has this particular way of doing things, and I'm not trying to over-romanticize it, but if it's working, if their people are happy in comparison to our people who claim we're not happy, then that's something that needs to be considered.
Is there any way that we can
Are they giving those answers?
is there any way
more out of our lives?
Is there any way that we can bring that conversation back to what it originally was, though, which was comparing the difficulties that our parents had compared to our difficulties?
So that
Because
means
it seems
we're
like
not
we got
happy.
Yeah,
we
we
got
went
like
off
really
topic.
far.
You're not wrong.
We
John can do
we
it.
made it all the way
I'll
to China.
Yeah.
Now we're
Well, I think the reason why I brought it up is
So-
because
No, I know
we're
why
not,
you brought-
Someone else.
I know why you brought it up,
Someone
but
else. Let's get back on
Yeah,
topic.
Mr.
All right.
Cope,
Relevant.
Mr. Cope is ready.
All right, guys. So for me, I think my parents had a much harder life than I did, and I think that their hardship contributed to my happiness in a lot of ways. My father, he left school to work on the farm, family farm, and he didn't really. He was ill prepared for what was to come. And he didn't understand how economic policy really affected him. And math was not his strong suit. And so something that had taken my family 3 generations to build was gone in 2 years. And it's really a shame. A lot of it had to do with policy, more so than his operation. It was about blockades and things like that eliminated his opportunities for trading internationally, and agriculture is one of the largest international trades, and
Oh yeah.
And it has an expiration date.
it was pretty substantial. And then my mother, she came from an abusive family and ran away, and that is something that I'm so grateful that I've never had to do. I've never had to deal with any kind of physical abuse. I've never had to deal with hardship of losing something that my family has been building for generations.
Your dad never hit you?
No,
Not once?
no,
Not even when you were being an asshole?
no.
that explains
It's
a
almost
lot.
as unbelievable as not
So
your story about
do-
not being helped.
I mean,
A lot of
I helped
Americans
myself.
are spanked. A lot
I
of
don't know why you can't understand that. Some people can help themselves. Some people aren't helpless. people like me who try to better themselves.
You keep telling yourself that story.
So, was that something that you had to deal with growing up, is physical abuse?
If
It's not
I was
abuse. It's just another form of
disciplined,
punishment.
if I was being an asshole, you can't reason with an 8-year-old. Sometimes you get it.
What kind of
Wow.
hitting are you talking about? Because you didn't specify, but you know.
My dad was not an abuser.
Okay.
He
but-
wouldn't whip out the belt, but if I wouldn't shut up when it was time to shut up, he might smack me on the back of the head.
I got
He
hit
might
with a belt.
spank me if I was picking on my little brothers, but he wouldn't. I wouldn't say it's abuse. It's discipline. They're two completely different things.
So,
That didn't.
do you?
Oh,
Am I
do
the
you
only one?
No, I got
no,
hit.
she said.
No,
she
I
said,
got
you know.
spanked,
I
but
mean,
I
but I think
understand
we're
that
talking
it's not,
about
it's
two
not the
different
only way
things.
either.
Yeah,
You know,
that's-
And-
I got
and, you
spanked.
know,
I'm thankful for it, but it's.
I think
okay.
we're talking
don't-
about two different things.
Yeah.
He's talking about abuse.
Yeah, I'm talking
And then
about.
you're saying your dad never hit you, but in his head he's looking at abuse, and you're looking
Well,
at
some people
discipline.
consider spanking in any way abuse.
Yeah, but that's
Some
not
people
what he's
consider
talking about.
shouting at their children abuse
Yeah.
because we lived in this nerfed world.
But y'all are taking like a serious
But to
thing.
some
like,
children it is. To some
Well,
children
it's
it
about-
isn't. That it depends on
Making
the child.
it-
I
And
don't
it's
know.
the degree
You're
of
kind of
shouting, too. Some
belittling.
people consider yelling at their children in some forms it actually
If-
is abuse. But
I'm
you know, it's
sorry, if you're
situational.
raising your
The
child to
difference
believe that
is-
getting shouted at is abuse, you are doing your child a disservice because the
But y'all
world
are
is
kind of
so much
belittling
nastier.
So
the-
you don't
the
believe in
abuse that
verbal abuse? You don't believe
his
in the
mother dealt
concept
with.
of verbal abuse?
I think there's
so
a
someone
difference
that spent
between
their entire life being told that they'll never be anything by the people that were supposed to be the most supportive of them.
that's verbal
That's an
abuse. Yeah,
extreme.
totally.
No,
there's
listen,
a difference between shouting
listen.
at someone
Yeah, I was
and
gonna say,
no,
doing
no, no,
it.
there's a
listen.
distinction
Listen.
between yelling at someone and verbally abusing
It's
someone.
just there are different ways of discipline for different people because I
Sure.
grew up in a family with many siblings, and so we all have very distinctive characters and ways of being. I was a difficult one, so they had to spank me. But I had a couple of siblings that were the best behaved people, so if you raised your voice at them, they would cry, and fairly so because they were well behaved people. So you can't treat them all the same. I think it depends from child to child, it depends from parent to parent, and wisdom there that they have. Of course, they're gonna make mistakes sometimes too. I
It
don't
seems
know.
to me that we've gotten off track again.
We have gone.
Yeah.
So,
Yes,
all right,
gotten
I'll,
off track.
I'll finish up the point. Another thing that kind of came to mind, that's kind of the background of my parents and stuff. The one thing that I think are my parents had that we don't have as much is leisure time. I think that there's been a big push. I see more and more. I mean, people fought really hard for 40-hour weeks, and now it takes about 50 hours to have the same amount, yet productivity has gone up so considerably, and it's whoever's in charge of that company that reaps the benefit of that
As it should be.
additional output.
I'm sorry, it's your company.
You know,
So why should there be such grave imbalance between the top and the bottom, even within a corporate structure?
Simple.
So here's
because
the
some
thing, like,
people are working harder than others.
so your father
What?
was like the ratio of whoever owned the company that he worked for, unless he was an independent, that's different, but during that time, whoever you work for, if they had the ratios of CEO pay that we have now, they would have been run out of town with pitchforks. There's no way that
then
you could
why are
make
we signing up
500
to
times
you're
more than
you're signing up for a job. When you get hired for a job, you're agreeing to a wage. Why is it that we have people who all of a sudden they made that agreement and then they're flipping burgers and all of a sudden they're like, "Wait, why aren't I getting paid as much as EMTs?"
Okay,
It's because
so
each
anyway.
job is providing a different service worth a different amount of things. You sign up to take a job. It's capitalism.
It's not
Yeah,
just,
what are you gonna
it's
do
not
when
just
that
how much
food
money
disappear?
they make. It's also about the cost of living ratio does not match. It's not sustainable.
I'm sorry.
Here's what I'm gonna say.
Upward mobility is possible.
this
You can make yourself a better person
So we're the
if
first.
you work hard.
We're the first generation that has a worse outlook for our future.
We're also a bunch of generation of people who would rather complain about something on Facebook than do something about it.
That seems like a blanket statement.
I'm sure we're all it's a blanket statement. It's kind of a fair one because look at it. How many millennials actually vote? I bet it's a tiny fraction compared to the amount of millennials who are social justice warriors with the hashtag blah blah blah.
How many people used to vote in our parents' generation?
Young people have always struggled to be the demographic that politicians reach.
Why do you think that is?
Because young people are irresponsible pieces of shit sometimes.
Is that including yourself?
I would say that, I show up to the polls, I show up to class, I show up to work, I showed up to track practice.
Do you think that the majority of Americans didn't vote because they're all irresponsible pieces of shit?
Hey,
That's
if
it.
you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
What do you think is the distinction between our parents at our age voting and
Got him!
you didn't get the fly?
Got him!
Proud of you.
The distinction of our parents and their age demographic when they were our age voting versus now. I don't know the statistical difference, but
Another one.
Contributing to that, because you mentioned social media several times. Would you say that's the sole
I think
difference?
my opinions about social media is that it's voluntary spyware. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and I just look around at people
You are
and I'm
giving
like, is
your
there a gas
information away
leak
for
in
free.
here? Is it 1984? Has we all just given up our own ability to think? Whether it's Alex Jones or it's the young Turks telling you what to think through social media, it's just so cute to watch everyone else let social media make up their minds.
I like how
for
you
them.
just go
Was
into
that
these
exactly your
rants that have
question?
nothing to do. That's why I'm just smiling over here. But you know what? Going back to the topic, and I might be wrong, and I'm open for people to change my opinion on this. Please do so if you believe I'm wrong.
You're wrong.
No. And of course, it goes from case to case. This is going to be a blanket statement, so of course, this doesn't apply to everybody. But generally speaking, I am a proponent of the idea that life wasn't necessarily harder for our parents than it is now. Why? Because I believe that we have traded problems for different problems. Our parents, yes, they had to deal with a great amount of struggles that we don't even think about now. But
Like what?
food supply, being able to
In the 80s?
to being able to move from one place to another. We have a lot more transportation, communication, you name it. But at the same time, there's a lot of problems that we deal with now that our parents never even had to think about at the same time. So I think that when everything is said and mentioned at the very end, I think that we have traded just one set of problems for a different set of problems. So our struggles are different, but not necessarily greater or smaller than the amount of problems that our parents had. That's my personal idea.
I think that some people in this country had a harder time.
Yes, absolutely. That's why I'm saying.
I know.
That's
I'm
what
just
saying.
pointing
It's kind
out
of a
what you
blanket.
are
It's
talking
kind of a
about.
blanket statement, of
Yeah.
course. But generally speaking, as a generation, as a new generation, I think we just struggle with a different set of problems rather than less problems that are.
I would like to add though that I genuinely, I don't know because I wasn't a functioning conscious person during the time, but it seems to me that there has never been as little faith in our political system as there is now.
Well, I would attribute a lot of that to what's going on with money in politics and the whole.
Well, we have a
Citizens
reality star
United.
as our. I mean, honestly, the
do.
Simpsons.
We
had
have a very successful
The Simpsons
businessman as our
made a
president
show
who
many
happens
years
to
ago
be on
that
a
reality
mocked the
TV
fact that a
show,
person
but
like
people
Donald
to
Trump would
ignore
become
that.
president, and
And
he
they
actually
really
ended
did.
up becoming president. I mean, this is Twilight Zone. I mean, people. This
The
would never
sky
happen.
is falling.
This would never
Reagan
happen.
was a movie
but
star.
But it happened.
And a damn good president.
And I think that the fact that somebody like this has the highest seat in our country, people, millennials especially, are no longer respect that.
I think that when you
Millennials
take
as a group don't
generation,
respect democracy.
I don't.
At
I don't
all.
We're
agree with that.
polling.
Come on.
No, we're polling
I don't
that.
agree with that at all.
No.
They don't
These
support
are
it.
polls. These are. I didn't undermine your figures. I made a point of trying to point out the limitations of those figures, but we are polling young people, and every generation coming forward has put less value on democracy.
I think it's because we're waking up to the
Do you
bullshit.
think, do you
Look
think
at
it
who
might,
we have in office.
just an idea, do you
don't
think
know
that...
Then you have to
about that.
participate to eliminate
Yeah,
that
democracy
crap.
is on us.
But do you think that it might be related with the fact that we have empowered people who are disconnected from the problems that the new generation faces?
Because
most
people don't
but
vote.
let me finish.
I completely
Let me
agree with
finish the
that.
thought. We have people in power who don't struggle with the same things that we struggle, and they seem to almost deny our problems. So people who are completely different generations, too many generations older than us, and they seem to completely ignore us. They seem to completely disregard us, and almost they try to make us believe that we should have even less respect for our own generation.
Yeah.
Maybe what we should do is try to find a way to, through maybe local elections, because not because I didn't vote in the president election doesn't mean I'm not involved in politics, because I vote in every other election that I can vote in, for your information.
already there, why not just
I
make a
think
choice?
through other means and through our local politics, we might find ways to limit how old a person can be by the time they're still governing.
Yeah,
Well, you
elect
know,
younger
like-
Yeah.
concepts and elect
we
more
should
diversity.
maybe be electing younger people.
need to vote to do those things.
So, and it's
Yes,
interesting
yes, but it's not only about the presidential election. See, I didn't vote in the presidential election because I didn't believe in any of the candidates. I didn't have a better choice. But I vote in every other election, which most people just pride themselves on voting on the presidential
But they
election.
don't vote local.
But the local elections
Well, yeah.
are just as important, if not
more.
more important.
I'm not
the
disagreeing with
and the
that.
Koch
I'm
brothers.
saying people not voting is a problem.
It is.
And
Oh,
people
yeah.
vote less in their local elections than they do in the presidential
absolutely.
election.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a problem.
Almost no one
It's a
votes.
problem.
I mean,
totally
I
agree.
hate to say it, that's a very vicious phrase, but if you aren't at the table, you are on the menu.
Yes,
Yeah.
but we
Very
should,
wise man
but we should maybe providing information about that in schools as well. So how many
You know-
kids don't know how to
yeah.
do it? How
This
many
feeds back
schools-
to what she was saying earlier, though, about changing the way that we educate.
Yeah, and
like,
you
the
mentioned it as
curriculum
well. We should be talking to kids about how to do their taxes, about how to prepare,
and
how to
why
balance,
voting's important.
how I
or
voting,
just not
and
just
how
the
to
general
do it.
election.
How to even do
Maybe
it. There are
parents
kids that
shouldn't
don't even.
outsource that job to people based on their zip code, though.
But when we have a
Parents
majority,
need to take a little
but
bit
when
of
we have a majority,
responsibility educating their child and getting their child ready.
but when we have a majority
instead
of
of at the
parents.
mercy of whatever public school
Yes,
you
but when
go
we
to.
have a
so that
majority
kid
of
should be
parents
at
that
the
don't know how to
mercy of
do
their
it
parents'
themselves, how do you
knowledge?
do that?
Then how do
you wanna
tell-
punish the kid?
That's based off what you're born into, then.
Yeah, you want to punish the child?
Yeah.
You want to punish
If
the
it's based
kid
off what
by
you're born into, it's the same could be said about which public school you get to go to.
Yeah,
But if
exactly.
it's a requirement across public education or education in general in the U.S. to teach, like, sex ed is a requirement, or, PE is a requirement. It needs to be something that is instituted in every school, that it's a requirement to take like a life,
PE
like
is
a life.
instituted in most public schools, yet this is the fattest nation.
Well,
in the
I'll be
country.
honest.
Second now.
I had training on that in voting, and we created mock elections and learned about the whole voting system. So I was lucky. I went to a school that provided that information.
You know what? I actually did too.
Yeah,
in
because
elementary
it's not a
school.
standard.
That's
It's
my
not a
point.
got
It's
young
based by zip
American.
code almost.
Yeah, but
Take
it
some
should,
know,
fucking
and it
pride in
should
your
be
children.
universal.
but it shouldn't be.
It should be universal.
It should be universal.
Should be universal.
Everyone
That's
should
what
have
we're
the
saying.
access to the same information there when it comes. And
Everything should be universal. There's a
here's-
pattern with
So here's one
Yeah,
of the
But should
things
it not
that-
be?
What's wrong with people?
Yeah,
all
let's allow
receiving
some
the same
people to have the
opportunity?
information.
And if you
on
want
how
everyone
to
to
vote.
do,
already.
if you
We're
want
all
everyone to
here.
vote, then everyone needs to
Come
be
on.
educated on how to vote, and everyone needs to have the same access
Checking
to
a
that
box
education.
is so
yeah,
hard.
I'm
Can we get back on topic about parents?
That's what we're talking about. Now we're
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
on
yeah.
topic.
Diatribe
Now
about
we're actually on
voting.
topic.
We were talking about the difference between why voting demographics have changed.
So I
don't
think
think-
I think that
There
the
is a
education
difference.
system, although I don't personally believe has gotten any better since my parents were in school, I do think that our people, although we have a lack of faith in our political system, I think that we have more faith within ourselves as the people to make change. And I think something like social media, although there is a correlation between social media and depression, it's allowing us to see that our voices can be heard, because now each one of us is a journalist. Each and every single one of us has the power to document and to share. And
that's
that
really
can
different.
change
That
the
is more
world. That's
poison than it
power.
is.
yeah,
no,
you know,
that's
it's
interesting.
Why give every
It's interesting
idiot
that
a
you
mountain to
mentioned-
stand on top of
It's
and
interesting
shout their nonsense?
It's interesting that you mentioned the poll about people of our generation having less faith in democracy.
Which I believe.
It is probably true, but there have also been other polls that show that there has never been a time where young people are more interested in politics. So there is a contradiction there because we have people who are more interested in politics now, but who also have less faith
In the
in our current system. So there is a moment right here, a crucial moment. Maybe this is the moment where we will grow as a nation, when we're struggling the most to grow and taking the opportunity of all this interest of young people and directing it in a way that we can actually use it and maybe say, well, now it's the political revolution. And even though I didn't agree with a lot of the things that Bernie said, that's one of the things that actually made me think maybe I can vote for this guy. Why? Because it was a political revolution that was inspiring young people instead of this man who was inspiring older people mostly.
Yes.
Your age.
Oh, well, hold on.
Only old
Mostly.
people voted
Mostly.
for Donald Trump.
Mostly
He-
where you
I didn't
didn't
say
say
He did
that.
not say
I
that.
said
He
this
didn't say
guy
that.
is.
All right.
You know, I'm gonna give up on you because
Okay,
Not
so
worth it.
there's a figure that goes along with younger generations being less and less attached to democracy as we go, and it's a problem that we have a generation coming up. The youngest generation we actually put through the ringer recently trying to determine whether they can spot a real news article versus a fake news article, and that is a problem. Social media doesn't make us all journalists. Social media makes a lot of people dupes.
But she's not talking about in that. She's not talking about in that sense. She's talking about that we all have the power now to document what we see and share it. That's all
Like
she means.
I had no
But
like
at
the
what point
black
do
man
you
who gets
check
shot at point
that
blank.
perspective?
Oh,
Nobody
yeah.
would have believed that. Nobody would
Exactly.
have believed that white
Philando
cops are
Castile,
killing them point
Alton
blank.
Sterling, nobody would have ever known. Mike Brown.
And it gives me
Well, and
chills.
the
It gives
lies,
me chills
the
because that
lies that have
camera,
been
that
there.
cell phone with the camera on it, will change the world for that one reason alone. And that's powerful. Who needs the president? We have ourselves.
I like that you said
Oh,
that.
nice.
Who needs a
No, I like
Who needs a central government though?
that's not what he said.
That's
I
what I'm
like
saying.
He needs the
Oh, that's
president.
absolutely what
That's
I'm saying.
right.
So-
You
That's what
can't
you
say-
said.
And
That's
I
what she
and I
said.
kind of don't
Great
feel
point.
like we have a president right now. Anyways, to be honest with you, I do feel like we're governing ourselves right now because he's completely incompetent.
sorry.
He's
sorry, wait.
completely incompetent,
Okay,
and he's
so
in
you would
office.
choose
So I
any of
do
the things
believe.
I think
so
you're
I
just
do
He's not
blinded
doing it. The
by the
people that work for
hatred.
him are doing it. He doesn't do any of
Okay,
it.
so that is them
He's
governing.
the
It's not we're
executive.
not
He
governing ourselves. That's
I didn't
not
say
the
we.
way
I
this
didn't say.
country
I didn't say we were
works.
governing ourselves. I said he's not governing us. His party
I
and the people
was-
working for him are
I
governing.
I
was
have
debating
some news for you.
about
That's how it's
governance,
always
not
been.
that.
Okay.
The president is not as much. He's not a king. He's
an idiot.
he's an executive. He facilitates. He chooses other people to do the work for him because he's the executive. He's the commander in chief. I'm sorry he's not coming to your house and going over your job resume to help you get a job. That's not what he does. He doesn't make every person's life better one
you go
case at
ahead
a
and go?
time.
No one-
he
I-
hires
Nobody's
experts. to
listening.
Can
help
we
him.
all agree
Nobody's
that we
listening
don't
to
care
him.
what he
Nobody's
says?
listening to him
Like,
no one's listening to him anymore.
So, I'm gonna
We all
propose.
don't care what we said. You're such a brilliant PhD candidate, attacking me based on my ideas.
I'm gonna-
Come on,
Okay,
Mr.
come
Cope.
on.
Mr. Cope, please, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm going to propose a bit of a solution here. I think one of the problems is the ability for so much disinformation and for so much of politics to be run on emotion. And what I would like to see is one like a centralized system where politicians could post their platform, and it's not about it's the platform. It's what they're going for. Because if you look historically, the parties put out their policies, like what their agenda, and
They have
had
their
it
own websites.
clearly
Why
outlined.
do we need an extra centralized piece of government to do this for us when we already have them with their own websites putting out their own?
Because they get to
info?
lie there unchecked.
Yeah, there's no accountability, not at all.
So we
So
would.
it's a
So you're saying we would
centralized-
have a centralized department of government choosing what people can and cannot say?
No,
Because that's
No.
kind of a direct
No.
I think you should.
No,
say
it's
that.
not.
That is in conflict
yeah.
with the
Of the
First
First
Amendment.
Amendment.
They're only allowed to put fact into what they're saying. So you're right. You couldn't be like, oh, I'm gonna, do, whatever it might be that the.
I'm gonna take care of the LGBT.
That's actually something that
community
can
and then
still be
turn your back on
prosecuted.
it.
It's just harder nowadays. You can't deceive the public.
And the problem is, like, the honest truth, especially on a local level, it's really hard to find information about all the candidates and trying to fight through the disinformation about the candidates.
You know what's
we
the
could
thing?
type their name into that would bring relevant information back.
No, you know what? It
But what
should
about
be.
we're talking about reliability.
One centralized location where we could put all this information.
That's
that's
private.
what I'm saying. That's my fucking
We
argument.
already have
buddy.
a private
Whenever
option for that.
No,
Okay,
no,
there
we
is
don't.
a problem that
Do you know? Have you ever
whenever
heard of this thing called Google?
Yeah.
anytime
private
you
company?
create a government branch, you open the door to corruption.
I shouldn't
it's
have
just
to
a
go.
government branch.
I shouldn't
It's
have
not a
to go
branch.
to the same website.
Anytime
to
you
look for
put
porn
that
I'm
kind
gonna
of
look
power
for
in
such
somebody's
official
hands who gets to
information.
say what you
No.
do and don't get
That's
to
not how it
say,
works.
somebody is
No,
going
no,
to say
no.
you don't get to say something because it's disadvantageous to
No,
them.
it's only the only reason, and I mean, this is a system that I've created in my head, so there's not a place for it, but no, it would not be about regulating what they say. The only thing that they would verify is that they're not actively lying about factual information. So you couldn't say, oh yeah, well, while I was governor, I raised, I lowered unemployment to -5, and like, I don't think there's any room for that kind of misinformation, and it eliminates all of the bullshit of attack ads, and you focus on not the bullshit, but you focus on
The actual plans and
Well,
the
no, but
platform.
we've got a fundamental problem that they see the issues differently. You look at the same information. We looked at
And
the
we
same
did-
photograph,
Okay.
and we got different
I'm gonna ask.
things
I'm
out
gonna.
of
I
it.
want to ask
but
a question.
the
I
photo
want to
is
ask a question.
Subjective thing. There's no like a statistical analysis of a photo. I mean, we could,
But we
if we
spin
did,
statistical analysis all the
So if
time.
we were to take this and say, okay, based on the principles of photography, what are some of the rules of photography that people tend to abide by?
The rule of
White should be
thirds.
actually the right color. Okay, and these are based on like accurate representation of what is actually there. So white
White balance.
should be true white.
I have a
White
question.
balance.
Yes, I have a question
Alright?
regarding that.
Structure
Drew
in
likes
general,
that
they
idea.
talk about thirds, like the rule of thirds. Like, I mean, it's not like it's like, oh, this photo violates the rule of thirds, so it's not a photo. But in general, like there are things that are objective and there are things that are subjective. And if you look at the ability to just have a platform based on factual information, that's the problem. Is that so much has moved away from factual information about the actual truth of what the candidate can do, or it's not this forward-looking idea. It's what can we say that's like, this is our platform, and I'm not saying that that someone is there regulating and saying like, no, you can't do this, you can't do that, but I mean, it would be a matter of, if the information is incorrect, under perjury or under some sort of a crime, to publish false information there. So it's not about a regulator regulating it. It would be about self-regulation.
We never
this is so
have
much
law
to do with
but let me
protections
ask you-
in the
but let me
United
ask you a
States of
question.
America.
I'm gonna
I
ask
would
a
not
question.
know.
to get back
It-
on
there's
the-
no-
I'm gonna ask a
Easy
question.
conviction there.
I'm gonna ask
Yes.
a question from you and from you mainly.
I thought my opinion
Okay.
didn't matter anymore.
Well, then don't answer it. My question is, because you have mentioned,
To
because
hear
you
yourself talk?
shut the fuck up for once. My question is,
Let him get on his.
and it's regarding the fact that you have mentioned something about the freedom of speech. You said, well, that is against freedom of speech. People should have the right to say whatever they want. We shouldn't have to control that. My question is, should people running for office be allowed to lie? Is that something
If we
that...
didn't let-
But
we-
let me finish the question. Should they be allowed to lie? Is that something that should be defended by their freedom of speech? And in the same way, sort of like when you're trying to sell a car. If a car dealership tries to sell you a car and they say to you, well, this car is 2018, 0 miles, take it, and then you end up realizing that it's actually 2013 and it has 200,000 miles, you're probably going to be up in arms because that's not allowed. The law actually prohibits a car dealership from saying something like that. It's freedom of speech. The guy could tell you whatever he wants, but it has to be factual.
But if
It
those
has to be-
factual laws are in place for car dealerships, why
How
are they
come-
not in place for someone running for elected office?
Yeah, and is that wait?
I can
hold
tell
on.
you why.
Is that
because there's
something
this
that we
thing
can't
called
all
the
agree
First
on?
Amendment.
That's exactly what I was asking.
So that
You want
protects
to put
lies.
you want to take the First Amendment off the table then. That's what liberals
No,
always
listen,
do.
no,
They
listen.
protect free speech
No.
when it agrees with them.
No, listen.
That defeats
Golly,
the
you're-
purpose.
Listen.
That completely defeats
Okay.
the purpose
You did
of
ask
having
me a
free
question.
speech.
I asked you the question, not him, because
repeat
he's
the question and let's
he's
just
unreasonable.
simmer on down. It's getting a little peanut gallery in here. Jesus. Please
Yes, but-
ask the question again for the sake of simplicity.
Yes,
because
I mean,
I lost the
should
thread.
should people running for office have should their freedom of speech defend
Encompass lying.
defend their right to lie to the public?
If
Okay.
They're running
At
for
what
office,
point-
for public
Yes.
office,
Uh,
and running for
at
Stop
what
public
point-
talking. Let somebody
At
else
what
talk.
point-
Liberal who hates
Let
Okay.
somebody else talk.
Okay, everybody. Jeez.
I mean, y'all two are the buddies, and you're pretty much going against him because he's the one trying to answer. So maybe you should stop talking.
I thought it was a question for all the idiots who
Can we
were-
go
No,
back to the topic?
I'm not talking to you anymore. That's it.
Let's go back to the topic.
Getting a little.
Hold on.
From now on,
Wait,
just
all
assume
right.
I'm
let
not
him
talking to you.
Talk.
Okay.
Let him fucking finish, eh?
Both parties spin. And the
Yes.
thing is, that's perspective. That is, one person looks at this problem and sees it one way, and one person looks at this problem and sees it another way.
Okay. But not
Where can you
everything
define
is-
the difference between that? Because if you're starting with something that is essentially true, that both people agree are true, and then have a different interpretation of it, is that a
That's not what
lie?
he's
We're not
talking
talking
about.
No, but,
We're
but
talking
yes,
about-
we're talking
there are
about
certain
blatant
things,
lies.
but there are certain things that yes, there can be points of view, but there are some things that are just straight up facts.
Like in regards to strictly factual.
For example-
like
for example-
if someone actually raised or produced jobs, if they saw this job increase while they were governor of whatever state, and they lie about it, we're talking about genuine facts and statistics that they
so that
could
we
be
have
lying
some,
about.
so that we could
Talking
build
about-
some level of trust.
Yeah.
Like what
Throwing away the
well, that's why I'm
First
going back. That's
Does
why I'm
anybody
going.
trust the politician in this room?
Oh, that's why we're
Seriously.
trying.
That's what we're saying.
That's what we're
That.
trying to
If
build.
only
We're saying
honest
let's
people
get
ran
rid.
for
But I'm
I
saying-
agree on
but-
both sides. There's that problem. So rather than arguing with ourselves about oh well your side lies, oh well your side lies. What about saying let's get rid of the lies altogether? Because
I am not opposed to that idea, but it's who gets to decide what a fact is. Because as soon as you regulate
fact is
that,
a
you
fact.
are going to have somebody at that lever. You're going to have somebody who is giving it a green light or a red light, and it is going to be their choice.
so we should have
Not necessarily. For example,
When you are putting it in
Not
the
necessarily.
hands of your government, good politician,
Not necessarily.
good politician who is seeking to help their people is going to do their best to not take advantage of the system, but bad politicians who are seeking to cover up things they've done,
not necessarily.
absolutely they're going to
Here's
censor
hold
stuff.
Hold on.
Not
Hold on.
necessarily.
Wait.
Not
Well,
necessarily.
let me say something here. So, all right. Do you believe that we should have laws like we do in terms of perjury under grand jury? Because it's the same.
Oh,
same thing.
absolutely.
So what if we
It's the same
applied
thing.
the
You're
same
under oath to
concept
tell
of,
the truth,
of
though.
oath to politicians
That
as a
makes
whole?
it magical.
What if when they take the oath of
Doesn't a
office,
president
they
take
take
an oath?
the
Process going on.
oath of perjury as well? That
They do.
if they lie and it's found out that they lied,
That's a
that
separate
they're
crime.
held
Yeah.
in perjury. So I mean, why? So I mean, because under a grand jury, it's two sides, it's three sides, it's a whole, a slew of people there. So in that case, you agree. So why can't we apply that same concept and say no? Once you take the highest office in this land, you have to be able to have that type of integrity. You have to be able to not perjure yourself because what you're telling is true.
That's cute on paper.
Yeah, on paper
Harder
that's
in
really
practice.
sweet, but in reality,
I-
you don't have
But
that
I
person
think
in
it's
the
I
office.
am
But
never
we
going to
apply it to
stop
all
being
kinds of-
afraid of giving somebody that leash. I'm never going to think that that's safe.
Yeah.
I am never going to think that that is not begging for someone to step all over you.
It kinda
Listen,
feels
but
like
listen,
right now-
listen.
That's a protection of a three-party system.
But listen,
have to do with our
Russia
three,
decides
branch
what the
government.
truth is. China decides what the truth is within the bounds of their country.
That's
and
not
we
what
look
this
across
would
the
be.
world.
we're saying.
How do you make it different?
That's not what
How
we're
do you
saying.
protect that?
Our grand jury perjury process, the analysis of how you would be perjured under a grand jury.
Yes,
Would be
because
that
perjurers
same.
have never gotten away with it within our system because of corruption.
Oh, if we
I
only
am scared of that. If you
Okay,
can
if you're
set
so
me up
scared
with
of
a
corruption,
reason,
then why did you vote for Trump?
Because Hillary
he's
wasn't
gonna
corrupt
drain
at
the fucking
all.
swamp. Oh no! If
With
we're
his
talking
corrupt ass
about
politics
long term,
and his lies. That
Hillary
you
was
could
just a
have that you
perfect
could have
little
possibly
angel.
prevented
Yes,
with the
Miguel.
system that he's talking about.
Hillary was an angel, I guess.
oh yeah, because Hillary never told a
Deflect
lie
me,
her
word.
whole
You asked
life.
a question about the 2016 election. Guess
Go.
who was the other
Deflectors.
person?
I am trying.
Your favorite comeback.
Deflect.
I am trying.
that your
And I am
superhero name?
staying on topic.
Huh?
Is that your superhero name?
That's your superhero name.
I know you are,
Please.
but
Yeah, seriously.
I am trying really hard. At what point do you trust someone to decide what the truth is for you?
when you have people on both sides. I mean, just like I trust the FBI to be impartial.
You sound like 1984. I'll let the system make up my mind for me.
No, I'm saying you take.
You
okay,
sound like
all right.
1954.
How about we
Good year.
utilize our
Year
judiciary?
my parents were born.
How about we utilize our judiciary and say, okay, the person who gets to decide is the 9 people on the Supreme Court.
1954 was.
We
the
have
Board of
wrongful
Crown Education,
convictions
by
in
the
this
way.
country.
not
You
at
can't hold the judiciary up as
1954
this
was
perfect
the,
standard
the
when it
year that
fails.
Brown versus the Board of Education was settled. So you actually
Please,
kind of paid
please,
your attention.
I've been
No, I
trying.
didn't.
So my answer to that is that we already have a number of systems in our country that have shown to work. We have a system of checks and balances for multiple companies and for our economy that do work and have worked for a number
People
of years.
never get around them, and people never build
People,
them to their
I
advantage.
didn't say that. I didn't say that. Just because there are exceptions to that, it doesn't mean it doesn't work.
What does this have to do with
I
our
mean,
parents?
but let me continue before we get to that.
Yeah.
I will go back to that. Don't worry. And
Finish your diatribe.
And going back to the analogy with the car industry, for example, you're allowed to say whatever you want. If you're trying to sell a car to somebody, you're allowed to say whatever you want. It's the best car in the world, blah, 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 blah. It's the coolest car in the world. You can say whatever the hell you want. But when you get down to it and you go to the DMV and you want to know the true history of the car, you can find out the true history of the car. However, there is a lack of that still about our politicians and about the claims that they make. And I feel like it should be as simple as a way for us to check on different things, but we don't have that. The one thing that is similar, the closest thing that we have is a website that I can't remember exactly the name of right now.
PolitiFact.
But yeah, it was the one where you can find out where
Snopes,
each
'cause
politician...
That's kind of skewed.
where each politician gets their contributions from, and that's mandated by law, and that is very accurate. You have to do that, and if you don't declare anything to the government of where you're getting your money, you will be penalized. All I'm saying is, if you develop a system where people can be penalized by that, you can diminish it by a great deal. Right
This
now,
is
there
why
is
we have a
nothing of
voting
that.
age.
Right now, there is nothing of that sort. So it is rampant more than it has been any other time. The only other thing that we could use to our advantage is, well, if we only had some kind of a bureau of investigation that was federal.
That would be great.
Oh, wait, do we? Oh, yes, we do. The FBI.
Yeah.
That's right. We do have that.
What's
So
your
The
point in all this
FBI
nonsense?
has been caught running guns. I mean, if we're talking about
Okay,
the
no.
FBI as
Oh,
some
okay,
beautiful
so if
fucking
you- okay,
standard, that's
okay, if you
just
don't-
gross.
if you don't trust on anyone,
corruption
if you
for
don't
every
trust
organization,
anything,
so
then
there's not.
Exactly.
Okay,
Well,
but
if
just
we
like
let's just give up. Then let's just give up. Let's give up. Let's go home. Wait,
we
we're having
go.
this conversation.
Who's got some
Come
poison
on,
punch?
let's go. Let's go.
Who's got some poison punch?
No,
Let's just
okay,
drink it, eh?
Hold on. When people in
Did I say
Russia,
bureau?
when
bureau,
people,
sorry.
Miguel, let
when
him finish. What
when
happened when
people
other people were
in
talking?
when
You
people
just
in
make fun of everyone.
authoritarian when people are in governments that are not yet authoritarian, and they broach these things and they tell you what they're gonna do. They're telling you it's for your protection and that they are going to protect the truth.
Right? Like
And
putting up a wall and blocking Muslims.
Okay.
I still can't believe I
So-
said burrow.
Yeah, I can't. Anyway.
The burl.
So, anytime you have that setup
Yes.
in the hands of a good person,
No, one
it
person.
does,
What
but you're
what
putting
do
it in human hands.
No, what you do
Well, that's
is-
why you use
well,
enough
but we're
human
humans.
hands
What are you
together
gonna use,
so
burros?
that there's broad accountability. So, like, the more that you can
So what?
average
You're
that
going
over
to
people
have 9 people and
on a
then
Supreme Court, yeah.
yeah, and everybody has a problem with politicization on the Supreme Court.
No, that's
Because that is going to be what happens.
Yes.
Those 9 people are going to have personal
That's-
beliefs, and they are going to bring that to every single thing
Yes.
they test.
But that's how our political system works. I mean, you have to trust human hands at some point. We're humans. You
I
have no
disagree.
other choice.
and as
But-
he said, justice is blind.
But if you think about it,
It's
our
not in
system-
America.
But if you think about it, our system is our government is compartmentalized. What is that word?
Compartmentalized.
We
Right.
set ourselves
Right.
up with checks
so
and
that
balances.
there's checks and balances. There is a smaller type of system that we could come up to that works in the same way. Just like a micro version of that. If you follow what I'm saying, we could bring that same structure to lower tiers of government. Something that checks this and checks that. And in fact, the more we do that through our government, through our entire government, that would be great. Instead of putting it so much on businesses, like you were mentioning about like middlemen that that serve no good, instead of putting it on our
I trust
businesses,
the government over a
maybe-
business,
Okay.
And
over
that's why you
private
and I are
corporations.
Okay, here's my problem. When we were putting together the Constitution, we had 3 pillars, but there's a 4th one. That's what is supposed to be doing the job you're talking about. And the reason that our founding fathers kept that separate from the fucking government is because it doesn't belong there.
Yes, be more
The
specific.
church?
Be more specific.
The 4th estate? Seriously? This room doesn't know what the 4th
I want
estate
you to be
is?
more. I want you to be more specific. Yes.
Journalism is the 4th estate, and there's a reason it's separate from the government, because you can't regulate what people say without opening yourselves
And
up.
I'm not saying that you'd regulate what people say. I'm not
is that,
saying
a
that
pillar?
politicians can say whatever the hell they
fourth
want, but they
estate,
should be
never heard that
accountable
term?
for it. And right now, we don't have something that we all can trust. Like right now, for example, if I wanted to know about a car again, I go
the
and check
same
the
analogy
Carfax,
over
or
and
you
over.
know what I mean? There is something that I can go and check. You can say whatever the hell you want about your car, but I have to check the Carfax or some kind of.
So
This is why
I'm gonna
we have
I'm
a
gonna say
voting
we're
age.
gonna have to agree to disagree.
I hear
You're,
noise-
wait,
I
wait,
hear
wait,
noise in the back.
wait. Can you just listen to
What a
this one
scholar
thing
you
and
are.
tell me if you completely disrespect this? You are going to say
Yes.
that this thing should be centralized in the government.
No,
So,
specifically.
what principle do you think we can use to end this discussion today?
What do you mean?
Which
I
discussion?
give it back to you.
So, all right.
We're asking for
All right,
clarification.
hey, so I have a principle that I think
What is this debate about? What single word is this a debate about
Honesty.
today?
Honesty.
Responsibility.
Honesty.
yeah.
I'm sorry, but Miguel, this
Honesty.
is why we have
Trust.
Trust,
Thank
yeah.
you. I
Totally
agree
trust.
with
Trust.
that 100%. This is about trust.
You have to trust
lack of it.
yourself to be able to discern.
I'm
what
sorry,
Other people are
I look
saying.
at the rest of the world and I see that goes bad.
I think that there's lack of trust from
I
everybody.
have a lack of trust for that for a reason.
But
We
everybody-
have
I
too
agree
many
with you.
examples
It's
of
like-
it going wrong.
Everybody doesn't trust on something. I don't trust
Yeah, trust.
the
I trust
economic system. I don't trust our current system. I don't trust these people.
I don't
Miguel,
trust
you're
our
sounding a
current
little bit more like me
president.
than you think you are.
Yeah, but you have to take a risk at some point. We're only humans. We're trying to
Trust.
do something. It's trust.
yes. So you
Trust yourself.
agreeing to disagree, your belief is that there should be there should be a group of people
Yes.
with their hands on those controls.
No.
No.
We're saying, okay, just hear me out. What we're saying is you utilize the systems, one that we already have in place, to assure honesty and truth.
That's
So
cute.
we utilize our Federal Bureau of Investigation, and we utilize the judiciary branch to be an impartial judge that is blind. And we utilize those programs and those systems that we already have in place that are already designed to do these job functions, and we apply it so that we have representatives that aren't allowed to lie.
That's if
That's
only honest people
that's
ran
a
for
really.
office, no one
I'm
would
gonna
vote
be
for office.
honest.
wanna
I
be a
think that's a
judge.
wonderful idea.
Guys,
I
how can I
think
trust
it
that you would
has
be
too
honest?
many
That's not a
dangerous
public
pitfalls.
office I'm running
Yeah,
for.
but it's
I
still about
think
trusting
it
people
is-
with power.
I think you're preventing yourself from growth there by fear. You're fearing that
No.
something's gonna happen.
Causation or
I-
correlation with what you're
Okay.
saying.
So, you
let's
guys
just not talk to
believe
him
what
anymore.
you guys believe what you
This
believe.
way.
That's what
but
liberals
I
love to do, and
actually
it's why
think
you
holding
always
people
lose.
to journalistic
You don't listen to
integrity
everyone.
outside of the government might actually be the solution.
Oh, I agree with that too. I absolutely. And if you look at the oath that journalists take, I mean,
And how often do they break that? I'm sorry, we're talking.
Ryan
Both sides
Yeah.
here are gonna say fake news, and we're not gonna agree who's saying it.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I absolutely agree. The problem with the media and the honesty and the ability to trust that what you're reading is actually true. Yeah, I
That's
absolutely
why-
agree.
I think the fourth estate
conversation
is
is
separate for
often
a
on the
reason. I think
verge-
it's essential. I think it's an
Well, for freedom
inalienable.
of speech, absolutely. For media absolutely has to be aside from the government in order for it to be the First Amendment.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and also for it to
So-
be impartial, also for it to have the power and effect to rein in people
I'm
when
gonna-
they are
I'm gonna
doing wrong.
I'm gonna say
The
something.
McCarthy trials ended because of journalism. I'm looking for that kind of journalism.
I'm gonna say something
Well, you
that
can
might
find
be.
it. The problem is there's a lot of noise. But I mean, there are some of the best journalists we've ever had in the world
I'm
that
gonna
are
say
alive
something,
today.
if I may, that might be even problematic for myself, and I recognize this. I can see it from a mile. It's the fact that this conversation is constantly at the edge of becoming about what is more important, truth or freedom.
But you know, it does seem that this does revolve around three principles: security, freedom, and equality.
The person who
Which
trades his
one-
freedom for security will have neither.
Well, which one do you all decide? Security, freedom, or equality?
Or truth. What about truth?
Security.
can you repeat
It
that?
seems like it's come around to security, freedom, and
Dr. Slater, can
equality
you please
from
repeat
here.
that? Like what you're asking us one more time, please.
Well, it seems like this discussion that has been going on has revolved around three different principles: security, freedom, and equality. Which one do you think is most important?
I think that I would take equality out of there. You know why? Because I think equality will be inevitable if we get to truth instead.
I think equality is impossible.
Mr. Parker.
I agree with you.
I mean, I think freedom is the foundation that this nation was founded on. I think with freedom, that allows for equality. I think with freedom, that allows for security. I think that freedom is the foundation of all of that. How do we achieve freedom? I think it's not the system we have. I think we need a much less central form of government.
See,
I think people need to be held to their own responsibility. And in regards to being able to discern who's lying or not, that's why we have a voting age. You have to be responsible enough to tell, oh, I don't believe this, or I don't believe that. This sounds right, this sounds wrong. And also, excuse me, just real quick, it's that idea that if you're not at the menu, you're on the table. Or if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
I didn't hear any of that.
That's very convenient, and maybe it's why Hillary Clinton loses, because you only listen to your side.
What? Wait, what?
He doesn't care
I-
about
Oh,
Yeah,
you're a
yeah,
very
yeah.
mature young
I
candidate.
didn't hear it.
That's not
I think
necessary.
that freedom and equality are closely related.
Yeah,
I do agree with
we
that.
agree.
Yeah.
Well, equality is
so-
literally impossible
I mean,
in like any political system.
a
It's
child
definitely
just-
not going
but
to
I-
be.
That is
It's definitely not going to be
most
possible.
definitely.
But I could make
Capitalism.
I could make an argument for each and every single one of those. I could make an argument that freedom, complete freedom, is impossible too, and I could make
Yeah.
an
I
argument
disagree.
that security is impossible too.
Security
I
being
think
the biggest
the
illusion
only
of them
thing-
all.
Well, freedom is subjective, so
I just
that's
think
kind
it's
of hard
funny
to
that-
nail down. equality is not possible.
One person's concept
I think equality
So I think
personal
security.
freedom
I think
actually
the
inhibits
only
someone
thing that
else's.
might not be is truth. That's why I say. But
Yeah.
here it's like, that's why I think the conversation will really be about what is more important to you, your freedom or truth,
So
because they go right against each other sometimes.
So I tend to
They're both
agree with
great
you
things.
that, like, for me, I see it as truth is the foundation that will result in equality and freedom. Because if we have
There's no
the
such thing as
truth,
equality, though. It's a false.
think-
It's
But
a
let him
lie.
finish his
Mr.
point,
Cope,
because we
please.
know
So-
that you don't agree with equality being possible.
so the more that truth is a foundation that we build everything on, you can have greater equality because the information is all factual. So you're focusing on truth and moving towards, of course, total equality is impossible. We have too many parts. There's too much going on in every direction. But the more we have truth, the closer we can get to equality. And the closer that we have to equality, the more freedom we have.
Yeah.
Because, I think that that's one of the biggest things with inequality is that it inhibits the freedom of those who are at the bottom of the pyramid,
But what is freedom? And ultimate freedom is almost anarchy.
The thing is that I think it's easier for me in my case to give up certain things like that and to consider freedom more, truth more important than freedom, because I, first of all, and as I mentioned before, I don't believe in free will anyway. So
Okay. Again, I believe the man that trades freedom for security is going to have neither. That's just the way that goes. And we talked about the long-term history of mankind, especially from a modern perspective, that we have
we haven't talked about that.
we have a tendency toward immorality. I'm quoting you.
When did we talk about that? I don't think that we talked about that.
Miguel, try listening.
Regardless of freedom, security, and equality, regardless of freedom, security, and equality, I choose authority. And class is dismissed.
Oh, thank God.
God. Oh my God.
Oh, may I point out that he never
choose
pulled out the
authority
Bernie.
and class.
He never pulled out the Bernie side.
Actually,
computer
he did.
died.
Authority and class is dismissed. Thank you for trying.
My computer died. Okay.